I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Commission. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commission Chair Marty Rosen.
Present.
Commission Vice Chair Bill Zimmerman.
Here.
Commissioner Tom Gidroyce.
Here.
Commissioner Ken Gaunt. And Commissioner Richard Croy.
We did it last time.
I think it's Ken's turn. Ken?
Ken, would you please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ken. That brings us to item number 4.1, recognition of Randy Ball and the March Air Force Base Aero Club.
So Mr. Ball had contacted us late yesterday and informed us that he, again, wouldn't be able to attend today's meeting. I submitted to the commission to either recognize him but provide a certificate to him out of the meeting, or give him an opportunity at a future meeting. It's really your call.
Gentlemen, what's your preference?
Did Mr. Ball have a preference?
Not particularly, no.
I mean, it doesn't matter. How about we leave it up to you? And if he says he wants to do it, then great. And if he doesn't, then send him a certificate.
Very well.
Does that make sense?
Sure. All right, brings us to item 5.1, approval of minutes of November 19. Are there any changes that need to be done? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to accept.
Move for approval of
Second.
acceptance.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, is there any modification to the agenda?
There are no modifications.
Actually, yes.
There is
There
one.
is.
Oh.
We're going to take 8.2 instead, before 8.1, because the people that were doing the presentation are stuck in traffic.
Okay.
Okay? Are there any public comments?
Yes, we have Linda Denver with the Rotary Club of Menifee.
Linda, welcome to Parks Commission.
Good evening. Do I need to be on?
Yeah.
Good evening, Commission members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. As you know in your positions, you want to meet the needs of all members of the community, and several cities have recognized the needs of their citizens who have special physical or mental handicaps, and they're revising, adding, renovating their parks to expand the opportunity for these citizens to enjoy our community and get physically fit, be with their families. And so I would like to raise your level of awareness to that need of that segment of our community. I can get you more numbers if you like by asking the school districts. I'm sure our demographics department knows some of that information, but I would like to represent the Rotary Club of Menifee as its past president to collaborate with the city on a project to either build a park, or when you're renovating a park, to include equipment and facilities for people with special needs. It is our plan to apply for a grant with the Health Services Foundation, formerly related to the Menifee Valley Medical Center, and request funds which align perfectly with their goals and the use of those funds that they are distributing. In addition, as long as we're able to make the project substantial, which we would like to do, we could also get a Rotary grant from the Rotary Foundation, which would match a minimum of $30,000 that we would raise through grants ourselves. So the money is there, I optimistically say, and the needs are there. And I know that your consciousness and your planning as you're doing the overall master plan for the parks are considering this need. So I would like, you have my card, and if you require any further information from our club regarding any matching funds or the grant proposal, I will make sure that you receive a copy of that so that we can keep in touch throughout. Then we would like to be included in the process as you're going forward with planning the parks for Menifee. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I wanted to highlight is the department has prepared an application to the hospital for funding that will support what we hope will be a winning application to install parkour stations, a walking path, and programming from the senior center over to Lazy Creek Recreation Center and Park, which is really what our first effort at the grant opportunity was. What I believe is being proposed here is an opportunity to, leverage additional funds for a separate new project that could be identified for special need use within the city, whether it be renovating an existing one or possibly a whole new park. That is something that we'll be hopefully able to identify this evening during the Parks Master Plan item. But if that were to occur, there's opportunities to do matching funds and other sources to make it, to maximize what we can get out of it.
Yes, Bill?
Actually, I
Thank you,
think,
Mr. Lennox.
Oh,
Mrs. Denver,
Yes.
welcome, and you'll be happy to know we did discuss this particular need at the last meeting. It is on our table, and I think we all agree that it's something that needs to be done. I know we can't discuss too much detail, but there's definitely a need there, and it's going to be a priority. Thanks.
And Linda, just to piggyback off of Commissioner Croy, I just want to say your timing's perfect because we're actually talking about doing that very thing. And I love the idea of having a service organization like the Rotary Club be the ones who are applying for the Valley Health Grant. And if there's matching funds through Rotary as well, I mean, that really is an awesome way to partner with the city. So excellent. I'm really happy to hear this.
yes, thank you. We hopefully will get a staff report on costs of changing a particular park that we already have, or what it would take to actually start from scratch and create a whole park for it.
Yeah, some of the pricing schemes for various park improvements, not just that, some of them are included in what you'll discuss tonight. As it gets refined even further, those become integrated into a 5-year CIP. So there's an evolution that'll occur after the commission discusses the top priority needs.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much.
Okay. As we said before, we're going to go to 8.2 before 8.1. Our 15-16 mid-year report for community services. Robert, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Rosen. As I alluded to at our prior meeting, this is conveniently good break time for us, not break in terms of work, but break in terms of mid-year, middle of the year, where we can take inventory of everything we've been able to accomplish, areas of opportunities for us, and really regroup and determine how far have we come and how far do we need to go. Okay. Good timing. In front of you is a staff report for consideration of the Community Services mid-year report, and I will give you just a quick jog down memory lane so you can remember back in May, the council gave direction for the city and staff to not renew a contract with Valleywide for the operation and maintenance of all city facilities, primarily on the west side of the I-215 freeway. That was a step-off point. And so since July 1st of 2015, staff that we've hired and staff that we also already had on board set out to really take up this endeavor. We brought on a recreation team, we brought on a maintenance team, and we also launched a very optimistic capital improvement project or program to hopefully before the end of the year expend $1 million in capital improvements in our various parks and right-of-ways. So very optimistic. Upon reviewing everything we've accomplished in the last 5 months, we've made some really great progress, and I want to share that with you in some sort of bullet points. I've also provided to you a really what I consider to be an executive summary of our mid-year status to date. And there's certainly more information and more detail, but I didn't want to inundate the commission with all of that detail that you typically get from us on a monthly basis anyways. This sort of summarizes portions of it. I think some highlights, though, is if I can go through a bit, is in each division, there's been some great advances, particularly starting with maintenance. As you've seen consistently month after month, the rate of completion on work orders has always been above 90% from month number 1. And that's quite an accomplishment considering the team came in with really a backlog of deferred maintenance items, a number of square footage areas to walk inventory and really get with the contractors on the same page and transition over, which was one of the benefits of having a former county employee lead up that effort in Mark Cooper. So we know we saved some time and effort there and made a great selection in having him lead the team. And since then, as you can see on the statistics here, at 95% completion on these, we made good progress. By comparison, though, to prior year, Valleywide Recreation, who was really conducting much of that responsibility themselves through the contract, their expenditure to date was higher, about $111,000, and the city's to date is about $86,000. So there is a bit less. Now, that obviously does not include all the salaries related to that, but it does include all the materials, equipment, any subcontracted labor, those sorts of things. So it has worked out to our benefit, and we'll continue to move forward on it. The maintenance division has also helped with multiple CIP projects. So typically on a CIP, we may put together a bid specification that would be bid out and then as a turnkey project handled start to finish by either a general contractor or a series of generals or a series of subs that we project manage. In order to save money, we have broken some of those projects down into smaller pieces and had specialty contractors come in and do some work, but then had our in-house team do work as well. Believe it or not, they don't just fix irrigation. They also know how to pour concrete. They also know how to operate backhoes and everything else, plumbing, you name it. They've been doing it and having a good time at it, I believe. So I'm going to move on to some of the recreation highlights that are in here. Some of these numbers or categories will look familiar, but I want to highlight that there's been quite a bit of activity in comparison to when Valleywide was operating, particularly at the senior center. We have in total about 11,000 folks who have come through those doors since July 1, which is quite a feat. By comparison to Valleywide, it was difficult to get even a monthly total from them, but if we prorated it, we're probably about 40% higher than they were at the same time the prior year. So that's a great thing. Notably, though, too, on any activities in the senior center, there hadn't been a steady stream of revenue coming through for various classes and activities because most of the instruction was being handled either by volunteers or folks who had an arrangement with the staff on site to provide a service, but then walk out that door with revenue in hand. And of course, as a city, we can't do that. We have to ensure that all cash handling is handled a very particular way. And as a result, we've been able to realize, obviously, a steady stream of revenue coming through. That has carried over similarly to Lazy Creek. This also has been a very popular site for us. There's a lot of activity in after-school programs. We started out slow because we revamped a number of the programs over there. As you may recall, the after-school program was structured more as a drop-in one. Kids could come through anytime they wanted and then leave anytime they wanted, and there was a small fee being charged. The challenge was that liability always becomes a big issue when you have minors doing that. And in order for them to do it, their parents have to sign off that they can do it. In addition, we wanted to lock in, their memberships, so to speak, on a monthly basis, so that we could set aside seats and slots for them. It's not a big facility. If it were, we would have a lot more flexibility. So, between that and our preschool program, which was operated by a contract instructor, we've been able to streamline the way we do registrations, changing from weekly and sometimes daily drop-in registration to session registration, which is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. This has made it more affordable for us to deliver the program, buy supplies and services, and again, set aside seats for all those folks to come through. And we've been able to offer multiple sessions multiple sessions within a session. So what that means is we may have a morning session and we may have an afternoon session. And so that's doubled really the capacity to serve those demographics during that time.
In that category, the total looks wrong.
Yeah, I saw that as well. So we do have to update that, and we'll provide that to you all. Reservations were nearly non-existent in prior years. If you look on that section, there is essentially a breakdown of indoor and outdoor facility reservations. Indoor reservations did occur at the Case and Acero Senior Center. Again, though, however, much of that was not done above board, so to speak. So we've ensured that all of the fees charged for use of space match what was approved by fee resolution that this commission approved at the very beginning of the year and that council ultimately adopted by resolution. As a result, we've seen again a steady stream of income coming through, and I'm pretty sure we're probably at about 95% booking, meaning it's very hard to find time on the weekend or an afternoon anytime to get in. It speaks to one of the demand needs of the master plan, which is we need more space. We need a bigger facility to accommodate the demands the community has to use. So outdoor facilities is really a brand new territory. Last year, we didn't really collect any revenue or facilitate this program by renting out picnic shelters or renting out athletic fields for sports user groups. This has been a blessing and a curse, as is usual in this industry, because as you rent these things out, you have to ensure that permitted groups are the only ones using them during their exclusive time slots. It's a challenge. It does take time, it does take man-hours to achieve, but we've been able to work really well with the community user groups that are out there and build relationships with them. Many of them have started to take ownership of the space and are very careful now. Where in the past is a free-for-all on field space, they didn't have as much concern. They'd come and go. The field conditions weren't an issue for them. But it's interesting, once you put a dollar amount and a time slot and value on it, things turn right around. So we're really happy that that's happened, and I think we're about to do in our next week, this next Wednesday coming up, we have our second ball field allocation meeting of the year. So contract classes, non-existent in the prior year. You've probably seen a plethora of flyers that have come through from everything from dog obedience to horse riding lessons to tennis lessons. Those are all new. They didn't exist in the prior year. Those are typically 100% cost recovery, and just takes one of our staff time to organize the classes with contract instructors to deliver them, and then find space within our inventory to have them occur. So that's been a positive experience for all. And you do have a small breakdown of the expenditures for each of the facilities that I've mentioned. In total, we've spent about $87,000 through part-time and non-personnel costs related to running these programs. Full-time is obviously a whole separate line item, but I wanted to make sure you saw what it does cost to do these things. And I want to transition into special events. This is a pretty large section for a reason. As I've presented to this commission, I want to say about 3 months ago, there's three main benefits of providing signature special events to communities, and I see it as the second arm of recreation. Essentially, they help build the local economy, they stimulate it, and there's the 3 A's, if you'll recall. It attaches a positive stigma to being a resident, right? It makes them proud to say they live in Menifee because it creates ownership. It attracts, that's the second A, businesses and new residents to come to town. And then the third A is achieve. It achieves the revenue through tax increment, through everything that comes with having regional events, even sometimes smaller local events. People spend money when they come to town. So from what we've achieved so far, we see that happening. We won't really know the full impact until we get the quarterly reports on the taxes, but we will bring that back to you so you can see the results of our efforts thus far. I won't go through every event because you've seen them all, but as you flip through, you'll note that there's an expenditure revenue and a cost recovery number, and everything ranges. Some of them we've been very fortunate to get sponsorships for and been able to collect a modest amount of revenue to recover costs. And although the city and the department are not in the business of making money, anytime we do have an excess, it essentially goes right back into the program so that we can either enhance it for the next year or offset costs in other events that don't have a higher cost recovery. And so some new events that did happen this year, the Fall Festival, great cost recovery for the first time at 60%, and only really costing about 70 cents per net, 70 cents per resident who attended. So that's quite an achievement for the first year. You'll note there's some in here that are one-time events, like the Spirit Park Grand Opening, which is this Saturday. Yeah, it does cost us some money, but it's a modest, small amount, especially when we partner with the developer to deliver it and receive some sponsorship dollars to do so. Others in here are future, meaning they haven't happened this year, but there is a cost or a projected expenditure associated with them and revenue. We are really trying to keep our cost per capita below $2 when possible. Free events are great for the public. What we try to do is offer an event where there's a handful of things that residents can do for free, and then there's some things that residents can do at a cost, and that really offsets what we try to do. The other one that's coming up is the Christmas tree lighting, and that's on the 12th of December in 2 weeks. And that was incredibly popular last year. It is going to, we believe, see an increase in attendance. We expect about 7,000 people to converge upon the roundabout tree for the lighting. And we've accommodated parking to ensure we don't have a repeat of last year with backup traffic. So we'll talk about that in the update later on, but I wanted to highlight that there's some changes that have taken place there. And The only other one I want to highlight here is the Music and Arts Festival, which is, we hope, slated for this summer, pending the developer getting going on the construction of Central Park. This is going to, what we hope to be one of the largest regional events in the area, and will feature a national headline act on the outdoor amphitheater stage that gets built in Central Park. And the revenue figure we provided is a very, very conservative estimate of what we can get during the event, and also sponsorships. Typically, the way it works is once you advertise, once you've got everything locked in, then sponsorships start to flow, and our developers have expressed quite a bit of interest. All are waiting to see who we bring in for the event. So that's really the lion's share of the report. There is a little more detail that I can provide at a future meeting regarding how we measure up completely to in revenues and expenditures to what was done last year for the 5.5 months that we're really referring to. But I wanted to give you guys a snapshot of how we've done so far. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
Excuse me. I think this is outstanding. First thing that comes to my mind is Menifee's moving, and I think it's a good move, and I think you did a great job. I think super.
Thank you. I'm not going to steal Public Works tagline, though. Menifee's moving.
Bill?
Sure. Thanks for the report. It is really nice to see actual numbers. You know, a year ago we were not sure how things would go with the city taking over the west side, and looks like things have really gone the right direction, and it gives us confidence to consider citywide parks and rec under one roof. So I don't know, with that, I don't know, are we going to receive and file, or are we going to make any recommendations, or what are we doing tonight?
We're supposed to receive and file, but when I hear numbers like 7,000 people expected to be in that little place, you know, I just hope we can handle them. It's a lot of people, plus the cars.
So Mark, I know we'll speak to it during his maintenance update, but they spent the better part of 2 days grading parking area that didn't exist the prior year. So, oh yeah. Oh yeah, he's ready. But yeah, I did want to add, none of this would have been possible without having a strong team come on board. So I don't want to take any credit for this, because both Jason, Mark, Margarita, Allen, and the rest of the crew are the reason why this has been so successful.
I want to compliment the entire department on doing a terrific job, and even going forward into the future, I'm sure you'll do even more. And I'm behind Bill 100% that we should start looking into having all the parks inside of our city limits belonging to this city. Concerning Marty's remark, in coming here tonight, there was a fire truck that I watched try to fight its way down the avenue. Newport. I was getting off the freeway, and he was weaving between cars and honking his horn loudly. And even though I'm sure we're prepared to park vehicles, getting in and out of there on an emergency is a big concern. I don't know if we've made a special provision, if you got a back exit or something, but let us know. We're good.
Okay, in that case, I would look for a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second. We have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
I'm sorry, go
Will
ahead.
this be passed on to council?
Yes, it's actually on the agenda for their next meeting on the 16th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? This is approved unanimously. I'm now going to move back to item 8.1. And Robert, are you going to start us off?
I will. Thank you, Commissioner Rosen. And before I invite up the consultant to the podium, I want to give you guys a little bit of background. And again, a little jog down memory lane. I'll keep it short because they have a lot more content than I do, and there's work to do tonight, right? So in December 2014, the city did authorize the city manager to execute the agreement with RGM Design Group to begin this journey of completing a parks, trails, open space, and a recreation master plan. And over time, I've gotten very good at reciting that title because it's a tongue twister. In essence, though, beginning in October, this commission also presented staff with, or staff presented you with 2 ordinances to consider for Quimby requirements within the city. Those were, in my opinion, sort of benchmarks and turning point because the city didn't have anything on the books for Quimby requirements within Menifee, and we're relying solely on conditions and ordinances that the county had on the books and/or valley-wide for areas in which they had jurisdiction. So critical because the general plan changed the number of park acres required per 1,000 from the 3 to the 5. And so once that occurred, we needed to make sure there was a mechanism to collect those fees instead of just it being a reference in the general plan. So the Quimby ordinances that you all reviewed and recommended for council approval were critical as the jump-off point. The master plan makes them complete. It basically says you have to give us parks, and this plan tells us where and what should be, where they should go and what should be in them. So that is the jump-off. So we started this a while back. There is a task list that the consultant had been working on for the past, it's been 12 months. In the next 2 weeks, it'll have been 12 months. All are pretty much complete, with the exceptions of, and this is on the second page of your staff report, developing the site-specific park master plans, part of what you will discuss tonight, and city boards and commission study session, which is what tonight is, in combination with the city council's final review and approval, hopefully on the 16th. Finally, the adoption will come after that by ordinance to amend our development code and municipal code to ensure that it's not just by reference of general plan, but also a mandate. When someone needs to build a park here, they have to comply with our Parks Master Plan. So with that, I want to invite up the principal for RGM Design Group, Bob Meeting, to kick off this presentation. I know he has some team members, one here and one who's on the way, that are going to fill in as well. And I think, Margaret, we have the PowerPoint queued up, so.
Thank you, Robert. Is this okay? Can you hear me all right? Is this needed to be recorded, or I'm okay? Not hearing anything? You can't hear a thing I'm saying?
Talk a little bit closer to
A little closer? I'm,
Yeah, sorry.
lean over like this? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe you know how to stretch that thing.
No, you're fine.
I'm okay? All right. Oh, and, okay, thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. Robert, I have to tell you, this is a very exciting time in your community, as I'm sure you can tell. Robert has got more energy than any three people I know, so you just kind of have to hang on. I've known him for quite a few years, and he's always had a great deal of drive and energy, and I think he's doing some tremendous things with you here in the community with your guidance. We have had the pleasure of working with Robert in the past and over the past year here in the community. RGM Design Group has been in business for 28 years, and we specialize in park and recreation facilities throughout the state of California. Our main office is in San Juan. We have an office in Sacramento, just to give you a little bit of our pedigree. I'm an architect and a landscape architect, and I've been doing this for a lot of years. But I have a young man who's sitting behind me who's been helping me, Andrew Steen. Andrew's kind of Mr. Inside. And a little bit later, I'll have my son here, Zachary Meeting, who's kind of Mr. Outside. He has conducted most of your workshops and been working very closely with all of you and all the members of your community in putting together this master plan document, which will be a guideline for you and a kind of a blueprint for the future. And we want to ensure you that everything we do is driven by the community. Our process is geared toward community involvement. We do a lot of outreach. We've done phone surveys, we've done internet surveys, we've had multiple workshops. We do everything we can to get a pulse of the community and what's happening. you have a very unique community here. This is a new city, but the community's been here a long time. You have some older areas, you have some independent thinkers, you have some pioneers who've been out here a long time, and they're very important to this community and the character of the community. You have a lot of people, as Robert mentioned, who want to live here. You have bucked the trend of the last 7 years of this so-called recession, the Great Recession. It really hasn't stopped out here. You've had a lot of development interest, and a lot of developers continue through and push through to where you are still having a lot of growth, where a lot of other areas in the state of California have stopped dead in their tracks. So it's a unique community. We think we have a pretty good handle with Robert's help and his staff's help. And by the way, it's nice to see the growth of the staff and the impact they're having on the community. So you're headed in the right direction. And we think this document will go a long way in giving you the guideline and the roadmap for the future. I'm going to go over a number of slides, and I'm going to go through talking about the process, and I suppose I should click on to the next slide. You have some beautiful parks here. A lot of developer-built parks. Audie Murphy Park down the street. You're going to be opening Spirit Park Saturday, you said. So a lot of things have been happening. What we want to make sure is that the developer-built parks meet the needs of the community. Developers will come in and put in a park, a beautiful park, that draws people to their development, so they buy houses. But what you need are specific recreation facilities to meet the needs of the entire community. So we look at that. We look at the distribution of those facilities throughout the city, and we also develop park standards for you. So the developers don't just put in what they can get away with. I hope there's no developers here behind me. Okay. I've done work for developers. I know how that works. You know, they have an agenda and they have a program. And if they can get away with it, you'll see parks that are in utility corridors. You'll see parks that are on slopes. You'll see basically a lot of grass that's not usable for anything. So what you have to have are standards. And those standards start with Quimby. So you have some funding sources. And then you have development standards, what has to go into the park and how those parks are developed so that you have quality facilities that are easily maintained. The developer's in, he builds his houses, he moves away, and the facilities start to deteriorate. One, because maybe some of the materials weren't up to snuff. We need to make sure that everything's bulletproof. I mean, public parks are loved and abused at the same time. So you want them to be long-lasting. Kind of like us, or like me. So with that, I'll go through this. If you have questions, go ahead and ask them. I will try and answer them. If not, I'm sure Robert can help. If not, Andy can get into the detail. And when Zachary gets here, he'll repeat everything I say, probably. So with that, let's begin this journey. This is just a quick overview. It's color-coded to the presentation. I cannot even read that from here, so I hope you guys have a closer screen or better eyesight. But I'm going to go through the process that we've gone through over the last 12 months. I'm going to talk about some of the inventory work that we've done, looking at your existing recreation resources, both facilities and programs, and open space and trails. And anything else I forgot there in that title, Robert? No, that's it. Okay. And talk about the community participation, because that is so integral. You want to have the confidence that what we're proposing to you has come from the community, not from me, or not from Zachary, or not specifically from Robert. Certainly we've all had input to that, and we all have influence on that, because Robert's a recreation professional. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and this is what we do. So we bring our expertise to the fore, but we want to know what the community wants and the community needs. So that's really critical to what we talk about. I can't tell you what that yellow thing says, but I know there's a word in there that looks like it's misspelled. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. I don't know if that's a deer dough or if that's bread dough, but it's due. It should be due. Now, I think that's the only typo I found. So really, the purpose of the process is to find out what you need now and then going forward into the future. So we look at the top facility needs, we look at the distribution of where facilities are in the community, because that's critical. And we look at the distribution relative to where people live. And that's important, because you want to have convenient recreation opportunities for people within an easy walking distance of their home. We don't want people to get in their car to drive, 5 miles to go take their kid to a tot lot. We want them to walk a quarter mile or a half mile, so that you get people off the roads, which are there's too much traffic already. You're getting new population coming in. It's increasing the traffic issues. We need more trails here. You know these things. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. I'm just reaffirming for you that in this document, these things are covered and recommended, and that this is going to be an integral document for you. And one of the things that when we first came out here years ago, and I've been out here a long time, we did Murrieta's Park and Rec Master Plan several years ago. We've worked in Temecula going back 25 years with their first CRC project in Ronald Reagan Park. We did Birdsall Park, if you're familiar with that park over there. So we do parks, but we also do this park and recreation master planning, and we are familiar with the area. So it's really kind of nice opportunity for us to be out here and working with your staff and with your community in reaffirming what's needed here in the community right now and in the future. So that is covered under the recommendations. And basically, as I said, how to proceed. It's the roadmap for the future. So I'm going to talk a little bit about recreation resources. You have kind of a unique situation with Valley-wide kind of on one side of the freeway and city facilities kind of on the other side of the freeway, almost a Mason-Dixon line. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it never made a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's just the way it evolved historically. This was county area. There were a lot of rough riders out here, and the county came in and put in some facilities and developed their recreation, Valley-wide recreation facilities. Now the city is here and the city is growing. There needs to be kind of an umbrella over the whole system. That's my personal opinion. I'm not going to sell it to anybody, but I'm just saying, looking at the systems, they're easy to manage. I think you get better utilization from community, as Robert just illustrated in his presentation. So you have 8 parks, with Spirit Park coming online Saturday. You have other parks that are planned for future development. Valley-wide has 19 parks, as well as parks that are in progress. You have a variety of different park types, and we categorize them here as mini parks, which are small, up to about a half-acre park area. You have neighborhood parks, which are typically a little bit larger and provide local recreation opportunities, tot lots, open space, picnicking. Some of them have more formalized recreation things, recreation opportunities, and then you have community parks. The community parks are those parks people typically go to for organized sports events, for bigger, you might have special events in them, whether there's 7,000 people, I don't know, but those typically would take place in your larger community parks. The distribution of parks, for the most part, neighborhood parks you want to have within a half mile, quarter mile to half mile of residential areas. So people don't have to walk or get in their car and drive. Don't have to walk too far. A half mile being a little bit of a challenge for those of us who are beyond easy walking experience. I walk real slow now. And then community parks typically are either citywide service area or several miles, 2 to 3 mile service radius area. So you can see the diagram on the right. I think you can see it probably better than I can, but I'll look at this printout. It's a little bit misleading in that, and it's in progress as I speak. We have service areas here in gray, which are the kind of circles. Those are about a half mile. That is what we refer to as a service radius for a specific park. Those existing parks service that residential area. Now, normally this would be on a land use map that shows various colors of land uses, yellow being typical for residential, or various colors of yellow that are typical residential. And we'll compare that to these service radiuses. So if there are a lot of yellow areas beyond either existing or proposed service areas for neighborhood parks, then we'd call that a gap. Now, this says that there's under-services area throughout the entire community, unless it's within one of those areas. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. So just kind of take that with a grain of salt, and then we'll criticize Zach later when he gets here. Just kidding. You can if you want to. But okay, does that make sense so far? I mean, I hope I'm not, being too...
Just one observation there
Yeah.
on that former slide there. If you could
Yeah,
put up
I think
the
I can go back.
Former slide. Yeah, I see what you're talking about here. There are large areas here of the underserviced areas that are in rural areas that their backyard is their
Exactly.
their park.
Exactly.
So
That's right.
it is a little bit misleading. It does look
Yes.
like there's a huge gap, but I do also notice that there are places up towards Sun City that are in need.
You're right,
Yeah.
exactly right. And that's one of the things that that overlay will show us. Okay, thank you for that, appreciate it. Okay, so we, in addition to mapping and looking at facilities, we go to visit all of the facilities throughout the community, both valley-wide and city facilities, and we take staff members with us, and so that we get a good feel for what's going on. And we develop an inventory of what's in those park facilities, and that's developed in this matrix. I know it's very hard for you to read, it's impossible for me to read, but what we have on the right-hand side are both what we refer to as park facilities, which are typically more passive-oriented park facilities, and then we have, to the right under the blue, we have sports facilities, which are typically more active or league-oriented types of facilities. The sports facilities are very important to your park system because they take up so much land and they cost so much money. And there are demands for those, especially in growing communities that have younger population moving in, and that is in fact what you have. You have a tremendous growth in the younger population area, young adults as well as young children. So that is not only a need now for some of those sports facilities, but also in the future going forward. And this is one of the things we use in evaluating that. The first 7 parks are city parks, then the remaining 9 or 10 are valley-wide parks. And we itemize specifically what types of things are in those parks. We also look at general condition, age, that type of thing, for potential renovation. Because if you're going to increase or improve things, the first thing you want to do when you look at your budget is handle the low-hanging fruit. And I'll talk about that later when we talk about things to do in terms of prioritizing. Okay, so this is just an aerial photograph of Audie Murphy Park and down in Newport. Some of your park facilities, and well used. I said, you know, well-loved facilities are well used and they wear out. So you have to figure there's maintenance and there's ongoing renovation and retrofit over time. Community center facilities. So part of that is distribution, and we don't only look at distribution of parks, but we also look at distribution of schools, because schools often fulfill recreation needs in a community through joint use agreements, and it's very important. I don't recall, Robert, if you have specific joint use agreements yet, just the one. So that is an opportunity. It's public property. It's important to have a good relationship with the school districts and develop good joint use documents that stipulate what the city's going to do and what the city's going to get. Oftentimes in cities, there's a real euphoria. Oh gosh, there's all this land. We can improve their baseball fields and get a whole bunch more field sports. And then as soon as they're improved, the coach sees how nice they are and puts a padlock on the gate and doesn't let anybody in. So you got to have both what you're going to provide and what you're going to get. And it's got to be very specific in those. So that's an important thing down the road as you develop those joint use agreements. So we look at school facilities and how they might fulfill some of the needs going forward and how they currently fulfill some of the needs. And again, the same thing, we develop a matrix of the existing facilities. This is now, we start looking at trails. The trails is a very important aspect of your community. It's a large area. You have a freeway bisecting it. There are a number of opportunities where there are freeway crossings that are important to pay attention to in recreation planning. The idea of a trail network is to get people out of their cars, to get them exercising. It's the number one recreation opportunity, or number one recreation activity in this community right now, as it is in the state of California, as it is in virtually every community, because it's free, it's easy to do. You just put your tennis shoes on and you go out the door. So we always find, every time we go into community, trails are the number one thing that are needed. These trails are taken from your general plan, this map. There's a couple unique things about it I wanted to point out. Is the large green line going east-west across is a utility corridor. It's an opportunity for a major link through the community, either side of the freeway. And it's an important link on that northern portion of the community that is one of those perhaps lower hanging fruit because the land is there. It's a matter of negotiating with the utility companies to make sure we follow their rules and things. But a trail is a relatively inexpensive thing to put in and maintain if it's done correctly, but it gets a huge amount of use. So that's just something off the top of my head that I think applies here that you might want to consider as you go forward. A couple of other things about this is because you have a large community and residential areas that are far-flung, you'll want to try and tie the park system together with a trail network. And there are specific areas. When a developer comes in to develop a proposed park, I think it's very, very important that the standards we develop for the parks and the trails and the master plan documents are enforced. And we talk about that a bit with Robert, about making sure that the developers meet the city's expectations in terms of putting in trail connections and providing rest stops or water fountains or what have you along the way, so that the system ultimately becomes a tremendous green belt through the city where you can hike or ride your bike or maneuver throughout the community without getting in your car. I'd love to do that. Okay. These are all proposed trails. There are a few bits and pieces, but they're isolated for the most part. So this is a big undertaking because it's a big community, but you got to start. And I think there's some of those areas that are opportunities that are perhaps a little closer than others, but to keep moving that forward, because there's a lot of community support for trails and community interest in trails, and a lot of people use the trails, as I mentioned earlier.
Mr. Muting, do you mind going back?
Not at all.
Because it looks like we're moving on from trails, but I just want to make a couple of things clear that I would love to see in this master plan some wording, language, discussion, whatever, that talks about the need to get from one side of the freeway to the other. And I didn't see that in this draft.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
we do know that at Salt Creek, they're working under that, and we're hoping that it turns out to be something that is a cross through. But like the public utility corridor up above, or even Holland Overpass and some of these other future opportunities to cross, we want to make sure that there are trail opportunities as well.
Absolutely. And that's critical that the master plan document be put in place, because essentially your general plan is general in nature, and it may show trails like this, or it may show connections. It's kind of a general idea. The Park and Rec master plan is the implementation arm of that general plan. So this will stay specifically, and if it does not, we will make sure it does say that that is extremely important. And I think, I know in discussing it over the last year with Zach and with Robert, that there are 6 opportunities now that we don't want to lose, so we want to make sure that they are enhanced, improvements are made, so somebody doesn't come along later and say, oh, we got an extra lane here, whatever they say.
Right.
So we got to grab them while we can, while the iron is hot. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of segue. That's kind of our inventory. That's what we do. I mean, I was talking a lot about things, but as it relates to improvements and things, but that's part of the process, is understanding the community, the park and recreation facilities, the trails, the programs, the open space. So that's kind of just a overview of how we do that and what we do. Now I want to talk a little bit more about community participation. I mentioned that that's really the foundation of what we do. And early on in the process, we do a series of stakeholder interviews. Were any of you interviewed, by the way? Yeah. Was he polite? Yeah. That was my son. Was he polite? Okay. He should be. I taught him to be. That's extremely important, because you work with this community on a regular basis. You understand it better than anybody else, perhaps except for Robert and some of his staff. But you are integral to the beginning of the process, because then we can understand what some of the key issues are and what some of the key things we should be looking out for as we move forward. So that's why we always have that early on in the process and try and glean from you what's happening in the community. So I thank you for your time in doing that, and that's really where we start. That's our starting point for some of the the critical research relative to community participation. We also conducted a series of workshops. We had, I think, anywhere from 25 to 35 people, depending upon which workshop. I think close to 100 people in all participated in hands-on 3 hours of workshops. Did any of you participate in the workshops? Did you enjoy them?
Yeah.
Good. That's the whole deal. I keep telling people this is fun. This is park and recreation. So hopefully those workshops were fun. We worked a long time in developing a process that makes the community involvement something that's fun for them. Because if you bore them to death, they're not going to come back. So we try and make it interactive and really make them part of the process. So hopefully when it gets to council, there's support from the community. So we did a sports organization questionnaire. We typically have that distributed to all the different sports leagues. And that's critical because it's kind of foundational information relative to how many participants they have, how many different leagues, what the age groups are, where they play, when they play, what the seasonality is. All of that comes into our evaluation of need. The phone survey is something that's extremely important. We did 300 surveys. You have approximately 3 people per household in the city of Menifee now, just under 2.8 something. So that's representative of about 900 people in the community that we've polled, got input from. And then there was an online survey, and we had 662 people fill out that phone online survey. The difference between the phone survey and the online survey is important to understand because of who is answering the questions. In the phone survey, it's a random sample, just like a political survey you see on the news. You know, they surveyed 500 people nationwide and so-and-so is going to win, or whatever it is. That's a random sample survey that supposedly is representative of the entire community. And in fact, it is. And it's within, I think, a 95% confidence level that plus or minus 2% or something. So that's really very important, again, foundational information for the study and the needs analysis. Because it asks questions about what people are doing, what are they participating in. And so we can then determine where they're participating and what the needs are. Oh, look who walked in the door. Look what the dog drug in. This is Zachary, you might recognize him. So the difference between that and the online survey, if you don't mind, I'll just keep going because I'm in mid-sentence, okay? I'll let you breathe. Just an excuse, okay, for him, not for me. I got this frantic phone call this afternoon. Can you go and make the presentation with Robert this evening in Menifee? I said, sure. It's 4 o'clock. Where are you? Oh, I'm in Huntington Beach. My meeting went long. I'm not going to get out of here till 5. Well, coming from Huntington Beach on the 91, going anywhere out here? Yeah, you're not going to get here in time. So anyway, we've had a good time so far, haven't we? Yeah. All right, so good. I'm a decent stand-in.
We would have sent the helicopter, but
It's broke. The helicopter's broke. Okay. So the online questionnaire, just to get back to that, anybody can fill it out. However, there were controls on it, so we know that they were residents of Menifee. So somebody down the street or down the road in another community, we're not getting their data. We didn't care what they wanted. They can go to their own city for their recreation. So we did have those controls on it. But anybody, any segment of the population can fill that out. And usually people who are a little more computer savvy go to those things and like to do those things. And sometimes a group might get together and say, hey, did you hear there's a survey? Let's all the soccer moms get together and fill out the survey. So you get a little bit of skewed results. Not that it's not helpful. It's certainly very helpful because it gives you, again, another source of information. But we couldn't say it's quite as reliable in terms of representative of the entire community. Make sense? Okay. I'll just kind of finish up community participation and turn it over to you if that's okay. All right, because I'm kind of on a roll. We talked about stakeholder interviews, and we asked a series of questions about the most important issues, the most important services and facilities, both now and in the future, and what does the city or valley-wide do best, and what does the city or valley-wide need to improve, and what is your vision for parks and recreation? You probably remember some of those questions. And so I think someone was even ambitious enough to do a very nice chart I forget, who did that? Your graphic? One of the council members. Oh, cool. That's enthusiasm. I love to see that. Some of the other, in addition to the stakeholders, we had the workshops. We published a series of flyers and published the workshops for the community. You can see the young man behind me there. Is that Andy, his stand-in with that slide? No, that wasn't set up. That's not you. Okay. That's one of your community members up there. What are the important community characteristics? What are issues or trends that might negatively impact the community, and what role can the city play in supporting the important aspects of the community, important community characteristics? So from that workshop, the top important community characteristics were the fact that it's a rural community with a lot of open space. There's low crime rate. It's a safe community. It has a small town atmosphere. And it's active, community-oriented community. So very, very important to a lot of newer communities where people want to come to because they want to bring their family there. It's safe. We also asked some of the issues or trends that might negatively impact the community. And when you do get a lot of people moving in, all of a sudden traffic gets worse. And then you have concerns about safety. Some of the other potential impacts were long-term planning actually preventing overdevelopment, looking at zoning, communication, coordination within the community and to the community from the residents. And that's one thing where we do this. It's always outreaching to the community, so we're getting that kind of feedback. They like it. They actually like to have that kind of a dialogue. And the beauty of it is they're talking to one another as neighbors and friends. They're not shouting at you at a podium where there's some perceived separation. So it's really a nice vehicle to get people together to talk. And thank you very much for participating in that, because I think you see that dynamic is much easier to deal with. Lack of sidewalks, bike lanes, trail system connectivity, that again comes back up, as I mentioned earlier. What role can the city play to support the important community characteristics? Communication, coordination again with the community, monitoring development, developing park master plan. Here we have a master plan, and then we're going to be looking, as Robert mentioned earlier, we'll be looking very carefully at each individual park, what its potential might be to meet those needs. So we'll develop park plans for each one of those on a schematic level. The need for a regional sports park facility. We also had a workshop with the sports groups, sports organizations, and we asked a series of questions. What are the best sports facilities, the worst sports facilities? What are the top sport facility needs? What are some of the opportunities to meet those needs? And what are the most important improvements to make now in Menifee? So the best sports facilities, Wheatfield, Audie Murphy, and Marianne Ashley, typically coming from the sports groups because that's where most of the sports facilities are in the community. And so that's the ones they go to. They like those facilities. They may not like some of the things about those facilities, because you'll see here under worst sports facilities, this was not schizophrenia taking place. This was the fact that there's something in Wheatfield that they don't like about it. They like Wheatfield, but may not like the gopher holes or condition of certain things. Pete Peterson and Eller. Top sports facility needs, community pool. Aquatics came up a lot also, I'll mention. Lighting for fields, restrooms, regional sports complex, soccer multipurpose fields. And then opportunities for meeting the current and future needs. Upgrade city facilities and perhaps redesign some of those parks for relay them out. Build large parks, and develop partnerships and joint use relationships with some of the other entities, particularly school districts. Most important improvements to make, lights, adding lights to facilities, restrooms, and there it is again, the more regional parks, sports complexes. So we also had a third workshop where we asked people, we presented all of this information in some detail in terms of what we were coming up with in terms of lists, and we even gave them, any of you participate in that last workshop? Where we had complete lists of all the facilities that anybody mentioned from A to Z, and we had, you understand, we got everybody together in groups, and the groups talked about it and came up with their recommendations. So the two areas we dealt with is what are the top recreation program needs and what are the top recreation facility needs. Top programs, swimming, youth programs, and football. And you know, we had multiple groups, so we aggregated the response from all the groups.
Excuse me, there is a question.
Yes.
On the slide just before this one,
Okay,
oh, I'm sorry, the one before that.
okay, that's good.
And then we'll just move on.
All right.
But the last item there, one of on the three that are highlighted on the right, the bottom one, more regional parks and sports complexes. Are sports complexes being added on there? Because I remember at some of the meetings, we were talking about regional parks as it related to other things like livestock shows and races and equestrian events and things like that. But somehow sports complexes always get tacked onto that. And I want to make sure that that other is in there somewhere.
Robert, do you want to respond to that, or Zach? Okay,
It is tacked onto there. I'm limited on so many words, and I try only to use the words that are given to me in the community participation. But not just here, but throughout several other of our online, our telephone survey, as well as the community workshops, we heard regional, we heard big, we need a large element. And it came up several times, and there were several different components that the community members that we had explained to us that we heard, various components that they wanted in this regional park. So this regional park, I don't want to just put one stamp on it, but it is multifaceted, so it would be a large community park, large regional park with multiple amenities in it. For this slide specifically, because this was what I was given at the workshop, I wanted to relay those exact wordings. But you're going to see regional come up quite a bit more in the presentation.
Something,
I just wanted to add, go ahead.
yeah, something to add too, in terms of what I recall from the community feedback sessions, the term sports was used fairly loosely, meaning, yeah, there's traditional things that a lot of the youth are used to, like soccer, baseball, those sorts of things. But then there was the population 36 and older who have been here a long time, and the rural experience is horse riding. It is a sport, and so the term sport should be applied to that.
And that's a very good, thank you for the question, because it's a very good distinction. Everybody sees what they want to see when you say sports. Soccer people see soccer, baseball sees baseball, equestrian see equestrian arenas. So that's an excellent question. And one of the things that we try to do is capture exactly what people put down. And in the report, it's much more detailed in terms of capturing all the other things listed, so that we don't lose anything. Nothing falls off the page. But just in interest of time and space to try and give you a flavor, so we've kind of shortened a few things. But I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's a bigger issue than just sport, typical league sports.
Yes? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, we talked about this. Am I going the right way here? I think this is where I was. Top recreation facility needs, or did I get? Yeah, I didn't get to the little boy yet. Okay, so top recreation program needs swimming, youth programs, football, and top recreation facility needs regional complex, I'll say, aquatics facility, open space, multi-use fields. Again, there were a lot of other answers, but we don't lose those, but we don't present them all. This is just kind of the summary of what we've been through. We take all of this information together. Some of this information is quantitative, as I mentioned earlier, like the phone survey. It's their numbers. We're getting numbers. Some of it is qualitative, where we're asking people's opinion. It's just an opinion of those people who showed up, not necessarily representative of the entire community. So we take that information and try and develop a tool that can help us identify all of the data that we've gathered and help us establish some priorities for you. So go ahead. This is our first tag team as a father-son team, so we're a little rough. He's going to take he told me not to say anymore. Just don't say anymore. So.
I don't think I use those words exactly.
No,
If I may, I apologize. I just want to spend one moment on the sports organizations. What we had done as part of the community outreach effort is we'd gone out to all of the sports leagues. We looked at the sports leagues. We asked them how often they played, how many players are on your teams, what seasons do you play, how many games do you play, how many times you can turn over a field. We had 8 organizations respond. Again, you see some of the lists there that we talked about, the game turnovers. This way, we've got an accurate snapshot of who's playing in your leagues right now. in the report, it details a lot more information, such as how many percentages of those teams are actually Menifee residents. So we'd go through and find out, are these travel leagues? Are these local leagues? Where are they playing? We ask them what fields they're playing on, and we start to pair that with some of the other information you're going to see here in a little bit, where I can actually quantify then for you, you need 5 fields of X type. You need 4.9 fields of this. This is where we get into that defensible demand needs assessment, where I can accurately quantify how much you need. And it's based on real world numbers. This isn't based on, I need to reserve 15 fields because we're going to have a good year this year. This is based on,
You hear that once in a while?
this is based on real world numbers. So as I go through this, you'll start to see some of that. And as I get later on in the presentation, I'll show you those numbers up front.
Ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what sports were represented by those 8?
I do, and actually I have some of those slides coming up, the sports, softball, soccer, baseball. I do have those sports listed as we
Alrighty.
proceed through this.
Thanks.
And the number of fields as well, which is one of the critical components we're going to come up to. But it's not a standalone element. Just going out to the sports teams is one piece of the pie. We actually take your telephone survey, which is another statistically valid survey that we do, and I compare it not just with, okay, what did they say they play in the sports teams, and what did they say in the phone survey, but I take demographics, and this slide shows our demographics here in Menifee. As we call people, each household we call, we ask them the demographic information of that household. We then compare that to the demographic information on the census. And what we have here is a very close match. So that way I know the telephone survey is an accurate snapshot of your demographic for Menifee as we go through this. So I know the numbers are very comparable to exactly who we're talking to. These are Menifee residents. And here's some information that I find very good to look at. This is Menifee. Population by age on the left, you can see you have some high population numbers, 5 to 14 at 13%, and then 20 to 34 at 20%, and then 55 years and over at 30%. But let's look at the historical trend. I'm just going to throw it out there. Menifee's growing. That's not a surprise.
Repeat everything I said.
We look on the right-hand side, from the population in 2000 to 2014, we see almost a double. It's expanding. When we look at the household composition is expanding from 2.5 to 2.8. Now, I don't necessarily who's 0.8 of a person, but it's getting bigger. We're getting close to 3. The median age from 2000 to 2013 is shrinking. So you have a growing population, just by those numbers alone, of younger people. Let's look at it specifically. When we look at that change of under 5 years, the very last column on the bottom right-hand side, we went from 2000 to 2013, we had a 104% increase in children under 5 years of age. From the next category with the largest increase was 20 to 24 years of age, we had a 180% increase in that category from 2000 to 2013. From the 65 years and older category, at the bottom, we had a 13.9% increase. Now let me clarify this one. This does not mean they're leaving. They're growing at a normal rate. But the other populations, under 5 and the 20 to 24, are growing at an exponential rate. So you have a lot of youth moving into the community. You have your senior population who are maintaining their normal growth, as you would see here. That is a normal growth chart there. But it's something that we look at. We don't want to exclude it, but we want to make sure it's included as well in our calculations as we move forward. Now, just to go through some of the phone survey information, I'd like to touch on a couple of the concepts, a couple of the elements we received in the phone survey. I won't go through all of them because it is a lot of charts and graphs, but there is so much more data that we've collected that is all included in the report as well as the appendices, and I'm happy to stay after and explain any more charts. But some of the interesting ones I'd like to go over is the first one of the questions we asked was, what change is desired by Menifee residents? What one change would you like to see? And what we heard from the community in the phone survey is parks and recreation facilities. And of course, freeway traffic came in at a second there. Road improvements, retail stores, street traffic, and then growth management. We saw that there was a desire for parks and recreation. When you look at the number of facilities as we go through some maps at the end of this, you'll start to see some of the comparisons there and why people are asking for these facilities. One of the other questions we asked was recreation, the frequency of recreation usage by Menifee residents. On the right-hand side, we have the telephone graph, and on the left-hand side, I have the online survey chart to throw in some of the online information, and I like to compare the two. We found that a substantial amount of your residents here recreate, 35% or more of the population recreate 3 to 4 times a month or more than once a week. So you have a lot of outdoors people. You have a large portion of your population who wants to recreate in facilities. We do have some non-users at almost 30%. We never exclude those. They're in there as well. But from several times a year, 1 to 2 times a month, 3 to 4 times a month, to more than once a week, you have a lot of people who are outdoors actively recreating. Oh, I'm sorry, the online survey, what we heard from the online participants, we had almost 613 participants in the online survey of valid responses that we've gone through. We found 70% of online users were frequent users, 3 to 4 times a month. So those people who weren't necessarily part of the phone survey said they also recreated. That starts to go in line with the 1 to 2 times a month, 3 to 4 times a month, and greater than once a week. So you see some similarities there. We also asked what the most used recreation facility was by Menifee residents. We asked that as well as an online survey. And here's a couple of the comparisons. You see Wheatfield is on the top of both of those. Very interesting. Wheatfield is the popular park right now. Audie Murphy Ranch comes in next on the telephone survey. Heritage Park, as well as other community mentions were in there. Let me clarify other community mentions. People had identified outside park and recreation amenities that they were traveling to recreate outside of the city of Menifee. So that's where that category falls in. And then La Ladera, El Peterson. On the left-hand side, the online survey, you notice Wheatfield was one of the higher ones, same as the telephone survey. La Ladera came in at 7%, and then Diamond Valley came in at 6%, whereas on the telephone survey, it was 3%. Now, there are a lot of 1% underneath these charts. I won't go through them all. But you can see kind of the top 4 elements on both charts are in there. So there's a lot of comparisons between the phone survey and the online survey. Phone survey is a statistically valid tool that we utilize in the demand needs, but the online survey is starting to reflect some of these numbers. We asked about the most used recreation activity by Menifee residents, and more than half of the community said they walk, jog, run, or hike. This will be critical. We're going to come back to this later on. You see a lot of people, again, are exercising. They're out there. There's a lot of bicyclists, too, the second facility. The third activity that respondents had reported to us was swimming for recreation. The fourth on there at 17% were tot lots and play equipment. And then it continues down, youth softball at 9%, youth soccer, adult soccer at 8%, and then youth baseball at 3%. Again, there are several other mentions below the 3% margin, but for the presentation, I've capped it there.
Can I mention something, Doug?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. It's important, this particular statistic is important in many communities where there's pressure for more fields. And the pressure's coming from the leagues, which are catered to or typically have that 5 to 14-year-old age group. And if you remember on the demographics chart, the 5 to 14 age group is only a certain percentage of your overall population. So that's why people who are perhaps soccer players or whatever, you see, well, why does that go way down? Why isn't that in the top 3? It's because the segment of the population that plays or is involved in that activity is a smaller segment. Make sense? Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to make that clear.
The next question we asked in the telephone survey as well as the online survey were the facilities desired by Menifee residents. And I've aggregated a couple over there on the right-hand side. You can see the total pool mentions was at 22%. Total trails was at 13%. And those are elements from that question that respondents gave us, whether they walk, jog, whether there's bicycle trails. We combine those all elements, such as the pool mentions, the recreation pool, the pool not specific, or the competition pool. Combining those all together, we see aquatic elements and trail elements, hiking, biking, jogging trails. So I aggregated those two on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, we see some similarities. 49% of the residents of the online survey identified they wanted new facilities, and those top facilities were baseball, softball, trails again, and aquatics again. You see those mentioned. So as we go through these, the community participation, you start to see a lot of these similarities pop up. A lot of these similarities creep forward. But these are all just part of the first part of the community participation process. Once we get into the demand needs, I'll actually give you the field counts. Then we'll talk about locations later on. We asked them what programs were desired by the Menifee residents. And here are some on the right-hand side, a lot of responses, all 7% for dance, swimming, again, arts and crafts, fitness. And then there were lower responses for non-program elements, gymnastics, yoga, music, cooking. When we look on the left-hand side, the online responses, 87% of respondents desired a new program. The top three were swimming, softball, and classes for youth. We heard classes for youth quite a bit in several different elements. After-school classes, classes for teens, youth classes where parents could drop them off. I also had several mentions in this category of any classes where I can have a youth component.
Zach, can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
You've been showing quite a few slides here with a lot of bar graphs. We didn't see that in the draft plan. Are those part of the appendix, or where would we see all of that information?
All of the narrative is in the first report. There are substantially less graphs in that report, but every graph I'm showing you, every piece of information I'm showing you today is all included in the appendix report. Everything from the workshop summaries will all be in the appendix document. You get everything. In the master plan document, the summary narrative that I have provided, it does have all the text of those elements, what I've just spoken to. Oftentimes in presentations, I like to show the bar charts. They're a little bit easier to speak to than slides filled with words, as my father taught me to do years ago. But keeping it a more graphical element, they are in the summary narrative in the textual version.
Thank you.
So kind of concluding with the online portion here is we did have 616 valid responses.
You said 613 and I said 662, so you were closer. He was.
It was conducted during the month of May, which was also during workshop 2. The online survey hot link was provided on the city website. It was also mentioned at the workshops that we had held for participants to go online and take the responses. Several of the responses, as we had just gone through, were similar to the phone survey, as you can see. Now, this all boils down into okay, what do we need now, and what do we need in the future, and how many? So this starts to get into what I like to call the demand needs, the DNA of Menifee. What we do is we take that first part there, the group of people, we take all the statistically valid information from the phone survey. We combine that with our sports organization surveys. Remember when we asked how many players are there, how many turnovers you have, how many times do you play during a season? We combine that information together with the facility inventory. How many fields do you have? Are they multi-purpose fields? Are they soccer fields? Where are they located, and how many times are people playing on them? What you see on the far right is 2 circles. One circle is the inventory on the right, and the one on the left is the demand. Somewhere in between is the sweet spot. You want those 2 circles to be closer together so you're meeting your demand with your current facilities. What we have here represents your demand. We take all that information into consideration. I'm going to use softball, the very first line up there. Some of the sports that we looked at, and there was a question earlier, was softball, organized youth and adult, baseball, organized youth, soccer, organized youth. We also looked at swimming, playgrounds, walking and jogging trails, as well as bicycle trails. Because of all the responses we were getting, we looked at these specifically, and we developed, out of all of our data, a demand. The per capita participation you can see there is the number of days people participate per year, days per year. Then we have a peak demand, how many people participate in a given day. And I talked about the turnovers, the next column over, how many times a field can be turned over for those games. This information is looked at from seasonality. In Southern California, we were blessed with a lot of great weather. Even during winter, it was a beautiful day today. Sports can play longer, sports can play later. With lighting, sports can even continue more than you would, say, the East Coast. That's a little bit different there. So this is all geared specifically towards Menifee. So we see the turnovers per day per sport. Also, the design standard for how many players are on a field at a time. And that gives us a simple equation to identify how many fields we need. So with softball, organized youth, we see the city needs, based on our information collected, number of players, the phone survey information, all the public outreach methods we've conducted, 1 field for every 15,700 people. That gives you 5.4 fields. Now, you don't build 0.4 of a field. There's the tipping point. Once we get past 0.5, you look at, okay, we need an extra field. Anything under 0.5, I round down. These are just rounding numbers here. But as our statistical analyst does this, they're absolutely perfectionists. It has to have 0.4, has to have 0.5, so we include those in the report. So you can see here what this means. I've highlighted the key category here. That is the important information. You need 3.8 organized adult softball fields, 15.6 baseball organized youth fields. You need 19.6 soccer fields, tot lots and playgrounds, 25.4, swimming pools, 1.5, and then the next two are identified in miles. For walking, jogging, running public trails, you need 23.4. For bicycling public trails, you need 36.1. Now this goes back to our inventory. We take the next step, and I move on to the next slide of, okay, what do you have? So for 2015, this year, as what's left of it, we've got a month left here, 2015, you have existing city facilities just to the left of that yellow column. You have 0 organized youth, you have 1 organized adult, you have 11 youth baseball fields, and we tally those all the way across. So based on your need and the number of fields you have, I've highlighted in yellow here the surplus or deficit. Now, if you have more soccer fields than you need, you have a surplus. If you don't have enough, you have a deficit. The deficit is identified by the negative number there. So for the very first column, you have a deficit of 5.4 organized youth softball fields right now. And this is a citywide analysis. This is everything within the borders. We've looked at all of the park facilities, and this is what we've determined. Now, there is, I'm going to say, one facility which will be added into this, which is Spirit, which will be opening up Saturday. That will be taken into this consideration and added into this tally as well, the amenities for that park.
Can I interrupt you again?
Yes, sir.
In the swimming pools category,
Yes, sir.
we don't have a swimming pool necessarily in the city of Menifee, but there is the Drop Zone Aquatic Center that's just outside. And I don't know if that little number 2 has an asterisk that explains that or not, or mentions that, but what I hate to do is have statistics lead or guide us towards some false need. If there really is an aquatic center that's completely underutilized and it's right there, and yet maybe a recommendation that you may make is that the city needs to expend a bunch of capital and build its own aquatic center when we maybe don't. That's kind of where I'm going with this.
That's a great direction to go, because I had that same question. First and foremost, I don't like to spend money. I think that was ingrained in me and by my father. I don't like spending. I don't like spending anybody's money. He's never given me any money. But when I look at these, there's a lot of demand here. So we need to be very careful with every penny that's spent, whether it's a good year or a bad year. So we look at those partnerships. We look at those opportunities to use joint use, such as the high schools, such as other colleges that may be looking to invest capital. There could be a joint use in that. Now, depending on how high that demand gets, then we might say, all right, Robert, we're going to have to spend some capital here because the demand is growing. Or if it's not that high yet, all right, well, let's look at partnerships. So we look at it from both angles. That angle is very specific, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that's how we look at it too. And I'll go through some of that in the opportunity sites later
In
on.
a similar line of thinking,
Yes, sir.
there's new developments going on throughout the city. Are those being brought into these stats?
The new developments we're actually looking at as the opportunity sites. So
Okay.
as the city has, I'm going to get to that later on in my presentation, a lot of new opportunity project sites coming up. There's planned project sites. There's also existing schools. There's planned developments. We'll look at those as opportunities to land the spaceship, so to speak, and look at how we can use those opportunities, maybe tweak some of them to get in what you need and meet your
Okay.
demands.
Are there any place that you'd be showing those that would mitigate these negative numbers?
Yes, I will be showing those.
Okay, thanks.
And
And I can-
hopefully to your satisfaction too.
If I can speak a little bit too to those opportunity sites relative to aquatic facilities in particular, one of the challenges of identifying a joint use facility is, especially when it's outside the city boundary, will it accommodate the needs of residents that are beyond a certain radius? Meaning everyone that's below in the southern hemisphere of the city, are they really going to be able or willing to jump on the freeway and drive all the way up to Paris to take advantage of that aquatic opportunity? And if not, then can it be included as a true demand need met? that's something that has to be balanced in here as well.
The reason I'm interrupting you on this is because this is new information, and all of us, I think, have probably read an online, on-screen draft, I guess is what we
Screen
got
draft,
a
yes.
week ago, screen draft, and then last night at 10:30, we got this that's got exhibits, but this stuff's not in any of this, so we're seeing it for the very first time.
And I apologize about that. The screen draft, well, it's textual. I'm just going to be upfront on that. It's very complex document to read without these images. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, to make sure that we're getting the information across and a true narrative rather than just giving you a bunch of pretty pictures. Pretty pictures will sell stuff, but it won't actually give you what you need to build, how much it's going to cost, and where it needs to land, and why. More importantly, why do you need it? So I do apologize for that. A lot of these graphs and charts are in the new pretty version, but at 10 o'clock at night, it's hard to get. And I was even including, I believe at 9:40, we'd included a new organizational chart, so I apologize about that. Everything that you see here today, everything will be in the appendix, probably more than you want. One item that we make sure is in the appendix is the crosstab calculations. Part of the defensibility of this document that we give you is you can always go back 5 years down the road. What percentage of the population answered this question? Aquatics. Why do we need that? Go back to all of the data I collected in a very complex chart on the phone survey, see how many people answered it, what age they were, how many were in the household, and you can extrapolate that type of information. We provide all of that to you. However, I like to summarize it all in a document that's a nice, easy, non-threatening document that everybody can read and get into. That way it actually gets
You want
used.
to make sure that your document is a usable document and not just something for exercise that the county does. So we do have all the details you want to read in the appendix document, but your document that has the meat is going to be something that you can pick up and you can swim through at your leisure and find the next priority and the next priority or the next 5, 10 years. So that's kind of why we separate those. Not to hide anything, just to make it easier for you to use the document going forward.
Not to slow the process down here, but my experience is in the couple that I have read in surrounding cities, way too wonky. This is a lot better. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We tried to get rid
This-
of Wonk a few years ago. Sorry.
He's thrown off my whole thought process. I apologize.
Let's move on.
This chart is on page 62 in that document. I apologize, and it does have that orange bar on it, though, that's yellow on the TV. So I want to kind of go into them a little bit more, is we took into account the city facilities, but several of you had mentioned earlier, partnerships. Well, we look into the partnerships, the school facilities that are available. Let's look at organized youth soccer fields here. You need 19.6. There are 0 existing facilities. You do have multi-use fields that we can account for that, but no true defined soccer fields. So you have a 19.6 deficit. There are 13 school facilities available. We take that 13 into account. That number of that deficit of 6.6 becomes more palatable. So it's not just city. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But part of our recommendations is firming up or creating, in several circumstances, those joint use agreements between the school districts to make sure that the fields are utilized. The fields are there. Let's work together as a community to start to bridge this 19.6 gap.
Right.
So we do look at everything inside the boundaries, city of Menifee. This is entirely all Menifee. So when we look at the other facilities available, the school facilities available, and there are a lot of, your eyes are better than mine, asterisks and numbers on them, those are also all identified in the report of what those mean. So when we look at a school facility, if it has an asterisk, or if we look at another facility such as the drop zone, those are all asterisked in here. So for 2015, the numbers become a little bit more palatable. You need 0.4 for the very first one, organized youth softball fields. Okay, we haven't quite hit that tipping point yet. But when we look at, we need 1.8 adult softball fields, there are some possibilities there. Combining a field, striping a field, having an infield fence, so that way you can actually accommodate some of the youth softball as well. So we can tackle those demands, and those will all be in the recommendations as well in here as we go forward. Organized, yes, sir.
If I can just add here as well, the column that states other facilities available, the 3 is a footnote that identifies that The offset is the result of many of the local leagues going outside of the city, not too far, but going outside of the city to play the games, and that ends up providing the difference. So it does end up becoming a policy decision that, hey, do we want to truly count that as an offset, or are we happy? Are we okay with the fact that these folks do have to go outside of the city boundaries to get that experience, and then we don't need to include it as a true deficit anymore? It's a policy decision.
I agree. The couple of previous slides ago, where when you add the two numbers together, you're talking about 10% of the recreating public going outside the city. And one of the big complaints of city council is sales leakage, sales tax leakage from restaurants, pizza parlors, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's something to consider.
That was exactly the point I was going to bring up too. They're not just playing ball. They're going to get the pizzas. They're going to go out to the restaurants out there as well. Capturing that back in the city is also a desire of recreation, keeping the tax dollars here. So as Robert had said, that is a policy decision, and if I may just take that 1 second right now to identify any comments you have on this report as we go through, policy decisions such as that will be included for the final city council document. So that way it represents everybody's ideas. The additional comments that come through on this, Robert will work with us on getting and making sure everything has been reviewed and it's all in the document. So those decisions become critical.
One thing I don't see in there is that the organized sports do create revenue stream. And I don't see any reference to that in the report. In other words, if a person's using a trail, they're just probably by themselves. But if it's talking about a soccer league, that's money coming into the city, which helps pay for that facility also. Have you cited that someplace? I didn't think I'd seen
I
that.
have not cited that, and that's a very good identification. That's a little bit different of an analysis and needs analysis on it, more of a funding organizational structure. It was not part of this scope, but that brings up a very good point, because some of those organizations do fund the mechanisms at the facilities, the facility maintenance. And you can take it further with some of the joint use partnerships that we're going to recommend later on here in the presentation, is sharing the school fields, looking at how different funding mechanisms can work for some of the facilities that are already existing that the city wants to have access to be able to place organized
Yeah,
sports
I'd
on.
like to see as a footnote, simply so the council, when they see this report, keep that in mind, something they may not otherwise consider.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good point,
Yeah.
too, to highlight, and I'll use the example of Diamond Valley. The concession operation at that facility probably makes enough to run it 2 times over for the year. So I completely understand what you're saying.
Absolutely. I will make sure that footnote's in there. We've projected out to 2035. We didn't just take a look at what you need this year. Let's play catch up. We want to project out to 2035. What are you going to need in the future here? So we take those numbers, again, same analysis, same chart, but we've done it based on your population projection for 2035. Menifee has grown from 2000 to 2013. It's 2015 now. We've programmed it all the way out to 2035. And again, what we have here, the blue bar, is we see those numbers start to creep up. Population's going to increase. Those numbers start to grow a little bit more. So as we go back and talk about we only needed 0.4 organized youth softball fields, well, in 2035, we're going to need 3.1. So we might want to keep that on our radar as we go through the development over the next 5, 10, 15 years, that there is another number on the horizon we're going to have to meet. It's not just today's needs, but it's tomorrow's needs as well. And that's one of the strengths of this document. So I'm not just giving it to you for today. This is a living document that will last you for quite some time. That is your roadmap for the future and how much you will need.
Just real quick, I just want to comment. The further out you forecast, the hazier your crystal ball gets. So we recommend in these reports that you update them, at least the statistical information on a regular basis, say 5 to 7 years. That's going to give you a more crystal clear picture of what's happening.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
well, we have this gentleman couldn't hear because you're not using the,
I'm sorry, thank you.
Microphone.
Not only can we not hear, or I can't hear, it's not being recorded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Also.
I just was, it was a side note, and I apologize to Zach for interrupting him. He's stepping on my toe here.
Not intentionally.
Real quickly. No, it was intentional, I know. I forgot what I was saying.
Crystal ball.
Oh, the further out you forecast, 10 years, 20 years, your crystal ball gets hazier. And what we recommend in the master plan is that you update some of this information on a regular basis, say 5 to 7 years, so that you focus in on the, as the community grows, as it changes. You know, you can guess, but your guess is going to get vaguer and vaguer the further out you go. We're just trying to give you a distance out there that this isn't the end. We don't stop here today. We have to plan for the future. That's all. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I'm going to add one other piece to this in that even though this will show the surplus deficit for every type of facility that was called out as a demand need by the community, you can view the opportunity locations and types of facilities as a economic driving opportunity, meaning just because this shows that in 2035 you will need 15 soccer fields doesn't mean that a priority for the commission and ultimately council could be to do a large complex that exceeds that number with the sole purpose of driving additional economic stimulus in the city, meaning you'd be able to host regional tournaments, competitions, to make it a destination location. That exceeds the demand need of the community, but it also has a dual purpose.
I just wanted to ask one question. When you were looking at the facilities that exist in other places, such as the schools
Yes.
or the college and what they're planning, do you also consider how much of it is being used by them? Because they do have programs that are going on after school. The fields or whatever they might have may not be available.
And a lot of times there's fences involved. You're absolutely right. And a lot of times those fences are locked on the weekends. I know as a child, I could never get onto a school unless I was in an organized sport, which is why some of those joint use agreements that we'll touch on here are so critical. That it's not just we want to come in at the 11th hour, but it's a structured agreement between the school of what the city might be able to provide and what the school could provide them with the current programs that they have. So when we look at those other facilities, I do simply look at them from, they have a field, let's work together to see if we can share that field. Now, I did not go to the schools and identify their programs and how often they're using that field, only that the field exists. From this point forward, we would need to make the decision, you would need to make the decision of establishing joint use agreements with these school districts and the universities to make sure that field is, if it's not utilized, it could be utilized. And if it's overutilized, well, how can we work together to possibly get an additional field at the school, possibly increase the utilization on the city's side then?
The beauty of the situation, I mean, we're all taxpayers. We're paying for the school property. We can't get at it? This doesn't seem fair. That's just a personal opinion. I should run for office, shouldn't I? No. What I was going to say was that the schools have programs, but what they have more of is they have land. When you put in a school, you have to provide a certain amount of land. At least you used to, and they still do for the most part. What they don't have is they don't have maintenance funds, and they don't have capital funds to improve. All they build now when they put in a school is they build the buildings, and that's it, then the parking lot. They're just not putting in sports facilities. So they're cutting programs for kids. It's kind of sad. So there is an opportunity, I think, for communities and school districts to work together to where if there's an opportunity where there's land available and it needs a little bit of capital investment, it can improve it for the whole community. That's what we're trying to emphasize. Get the most bang for every buck.
Maybe as a footnote, Robert, to include in planning when new schools come online, in the design process, having a joint use agreement as it's being designed. That would cut out a lot of problems there.
We're doing that right now in Yorba Linda for Yorba Linda High School. The city's actually putting in sports facilities as part of a park that they can use adjacent to the high school. So there are examples out there to how to do that, and this one you might want to look at.
Thank you.
What we do with all of this information now is we look at the prioritization of this. What's first? What's second? What's third? What's got to happen now? Now, if you'll recall, some of you were at that third workshop. We looked at your prioritization, the community's prioritization of what they wanted to see. And how we come to that conclusion is we identify all of the tools that we've done. And in this chart here, On the left-hand side, it's very small. I'm going to enlarge it here in a second. My eyes can't even read that. Everything we've heard on the left-hand side, this is very similar to the dots that you did during that workshop. And on the right-hand side, at the top are all of the tools we used, and I'll enlarge that here. So what we had was a telephone survey. We had the demand needs analysis, what you need today and what you need in the future. Then on the top, also going across, we had, this is on page 72 of your document. What we had was the telephone survey, what people wanted. What I like to use is the qualitative information, the online survey, the stakeholder interviews, community workshops 1, 2, and 3, sports organization survey wants, as well as the program needs from our programs analysis. We take all this information in and we simply check the box of how many times we heard it in each one of those tools. Now you'll note there's 2 blue bars at the very top. One says quantitative, one says qualitative. Quantitative tools are what I can identify to your specific community makeup, your demographics. That is a statistically valid tool, gets a weight of 2. All of the quantitative tools, the qualitative tools, are what people want, and we listen to that as well. Those get a ranking of 1. So essentially that very first row, aquatics facility, swimming pool, competitive pool, and water park, all terms that we have heard, were heard on the very first 3 rows, the telephone survey, the demand needs, now and in the future. That's 3 boxes. Quantitative gets a ranking of 2, so that's 6 points. The rest are added up by 1, and you get a total of 12 points. We do that for all of the mentions that we heard. The football, the gymnasium, the lighting, the security, the sports fields, the open space, the parking. Everything that we've heard, we do that analysis for. And we come up with this chart here. This chart is the highest priority facilities and the high priority facilities because there are no low priorities. What we found are trails, biking were at 13. We also found second there, trails, walking, jogging, hiking, and sidewalks at 12. You could aggregate those together, but because they were separated by the community, I wanted to keep them separated here. And then the aquatics facility came in at a ranking of 12. Soccer fields came in at a ranking of 11. Baseball and softball came in at a ranking of 9. Below that, we had a separation from 9 to the next highest tool was 6. So we have high priority facilities here, which are playgrounds and tot lots. Community center, also regional multi-use intergenerational center. Then here's our sports complex, regional park, which could have artificial turf elements in it, as well as cultural arts center, performing arts center, theater, football, and then finally lighting sports fields at 4. These were the highest ranked and high ranked priorities that we found throughout this entire process. Every tool we use to go out to the community and hear their feedback, every statistically valid tool we use as well, has brought this information up to us to see the highest and high priorities. So this is what we would look at in terms of prioritization. Now, when we look at some of the recommendations as we move into it, I want to look at distribution. Distribution is key because with this map, what we see here are your existing and some proposed park facilities here. We've identified the city parks as well as the Valleywide Park and Recreation District parks in here. And you can see there's a lot of parks on the left, not a lot on the left and a lot on the right. So this distribution is key when we go forward and look at where we're going to land the spaceship, the new facilities. Do we want to jam them all up in one area, or do we want to create an equal distribution of facilities? Not just park locations, but also amenities. Not all the soccer fields on one side, but a distribution of all the soccer fields across the city, so that way there is one city united vision throughout Menifee. And we take that into consideration. What I have here is just an example. Now, if you were with me on the second workshop, you went through quite a few of these examples. I apologize, but I like to share every piece of information I can. This is just the baseball fields, where the baseball fields are located. So as one of the examples, what we do is when we start to land those baseball and softball fields, I'm going to look at where they are. We look at where all of the fields are currently and how we're going to land the spaceship in a different area to make sure it serves the entire community. As Robert had mentioned, there is a radius to where people will drive to. And that radius, if it's all the way at the north end of the city, a lot of the south end, people probably won't get on the freeway and drive to it. So we want to make sure the distribution is equal throughout the city of Menifee. And that's just the baseball example. We'll do that with each sport as we go through. Here are some of the distribution of the opportunities. You notice that map is a lot more evenly distributed throughout the opportunities. It's not just all on the right-hand side now. There are future partnerships and joint use sites, such as the schools. We talked about that earlier, creating joint use agreements. As Bob had mentioned, working with the school districts to develop park facilities on new schools. The population is growing, new schools will be coming. That is an excellent opportunity to put in some money, some joint use dollars with schools to create facilities. And we've identified those areas on the map with the current facilities, current schools. Also, privately owned property. We've identified several privately owned parcels, potential sites throughout this map that could host these facilities as we start to land the spaceship. And then lastly, future city sites. This was brought up earlier as a question. We do look at your future city sites. We'll also look at, okay, what's the plan? Well, here's our demand. We now know what we need. We know what the priorities are. We can start to look at those plans and identify if there are any tweaks that need to be made. That way we can start to meet our demand without having to redesign anything or say, okay, we already have these 20 planned sites, let's add another 20. No, let's use what's currently going to come online, what we're planning for now, and making sure we don't double dip or we don't duplicate an effort that's already going to exist somewhere. The result will be this nice distribution of fields throughout the city of Menifee. And here is with all the parks identified on the map again, which what we're looking for is that equal distribution. This shows the existing as well as the proposed and opportunity sites. This map is a lot more evenly spread out. This creates one unified vision. Now, if I may, I want to go back a little bit to some of our recommendations. We're going to start with the existing park recommendations. We want to look at the highest priorities, the high priorities, and then park-specific planning elements and cost estimates. I'll talk about that last. Let's get the low-hanging fruit first. You have existing parks. As far as the prioritization, we've provided in this document elements of these existing parks that need to be updated and should be updated within the first few years. So that way you don't have a accumulation of maintenance backlog, which starts to build up and accumulate over years, which will build up to a substantial dollar amount if left unchecked. We've identified all these elements in there, such as repairing shade structures at Rancho Ramona Park, the ramps, adding picnic shelters to Lyle Marsh, the Nova Park there, checking the irrigation systems to correct overspray issues. These might seem minor, but when you talk about the overspray issues, well, if they're overspraying onto a rubberized surface of a tot lot, it's deteriorating that rubberized surface of the tot lot much faster than would little kid shoes running along it. That helps prolong the length of that tot lot. This is the low-hanging fruit I think you should attack first as a priority as you go through this. And all these recommendations are in our document. Second, we look at some of those big expenses, the capital ones, of adding trails, adding bikeways, the aquatics facilities, the soccer fields. We look at these priorities and we start to identify, okay, out of these highest priorities, what is our demand? Baseball fields. Let's land the spaceship on several of these baseball field sites. That way they're equally distributed across the city with an appropriate distance from all the residents in the appropriate areas, looking at the land use, making sure they're at near residential areas, not off in the distance, preserving some of that open space as well. And then the trails. You might have seen my trails map earlier, actually your trails map, but I had to look at it for a long time. And I finally came to Robert and said, Robert, I can't find the trails. I've been out here, I've toured the parks, I've seen a lot of developer trails, but I can't find trail connectivity. Am I missing it? Well, so what we've done is we've identified a vision. You can see what I've done is I've overlaid a color map on top of the black and white trails map, and I've identified some areas that should be taken into consideration right away. And there's a couple things that I want to point out on your trails, such as your recommendations you'll see as priorities. Right now you have a lot of existing developments going in. Any of those developments now, this document will identify that those developers should put those trails in by your trail guidelines right now. That should be a mandatory element. Anywhere the development lands within these vicinities, these trail lines, as that becomes a priority. Second is the major trail corridor. At the very north end, there's an Edison easement. Looking at that as a major east-west access corridor, or regional trail network up there, looking at that as a priority, as well as new city development trails to create park connections. One of the benefits of trails is connecting your park system. Looking at I have a pointer in here too. the west side and the east side, we've identified in the core area where a substantial amount of parks are, that you can begin to build these trails and make a park connectivity a possibility faster than having to say, to take a trail from the north end to the south end of Menifee. Connecting parks and localized areas is something we want to recommend as a priority, as well as one of the last elements here, crosstown connections. You only have 6 crosstown connections on this map through the freeway as it bisects the city, making sure those are a priority. So those crosstown connections are in place as the trail connections can come up to them on either side, on the east and west. Making sure you reserve those now, particularly with road improvements and traffic patterns. As that gets updated, this becomes a priority to watch those crosstown connections and make sure they're included.
I love it. And Zach, this is something before you got here we had mentioned
Okay.
that we wanted to see that in place and shown that in case there are bridges or opportunities that come up in the future, it's shown. Real quick question. So when a developer comes in, the plan is looked at for consistency with the general plan. And so if some of these are added to the non-motorized circulation element of the general plan, is that the way that's going to be, or is that just part of this parks document and it doesn't really have any, I guess, teeth, if you want to use the
Bite.
word? Right. Tell me about, in future development, does this apply?
The short answer is yes, it can and will. It all is a matter of how it gets adopted ultimately. So after council reviews and concurs with the findings of this commission, as it's outlaid in this report, this map essentially replaces the one that's in the general plan. And that's what the developers have to comply with when they bring it in. My job is to make sure when they do, and I review those conceptual designs, they don't give us things we don't need, and they do give us the things that are here.
Just a question, I don't have to tell you how many of the specific plans were planned by the county long before we ever became a city, and they're in place, and it's an overwhelming majority of the land that's already identified. Without this, how do you get this in? I know if they make a change, any change, we can add it, but what if they don't?
Sure, it's a fair question. Many of them, luckily, have gotten to a point where the plans have expired. And so they have to come back to the well, and then we enforce it. The ones that are still current, there's only a handful. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 specific plans where we're in that situation. We can't do much to force them to change, but it's a very small percentage of the overall land that we know has some entitlement upon it. It's going to expire. It already has expired, and they'll have to comply once this is adopted.
Thank you.
With that, this trail plan will be in the document, and we'll identify these a little bit more clearly than we see on this picture here. What you did not see tonight, which will be included in that document, I'm going to go back a couple slides, is when we do the park-specific plans, the plans that show the baseball fields. We do, based on this analysis, distributing all the parks across the city of Menifee, we'll do spatial analysis. That way I land a park, a ball field in a park to make sure it fits with the appropriate parking. That way, those plans, you'll see exactly where you can identify the baseball field, and I'm just using that as an example, how many fields you can get on the site, park-specific plans, as well as the cost estimates. Those will be added into this document after this meeting here. Those are included and will be included with any additional comments you have. I'd like to end with the final slide here of how to proceed. I'm asked this question a lot, and, well, it depends. That's a terrible answer, but it does depend. This is a living document. It can change based on the current economic climates. In good times or in bad times, there are different priorities. Now, there are priorities identified in here that should be taken into consideration, such as the trails that we just talked about. But if there's a grant opportunity, there are grants coming online here soon, a grant opportunity for a specific park element, that then becomes a new priority. You go after that one because of the funding available for it and different grants. Also, joint use partnerships, as Bob had mentioned, you guys had mentioned, as schools come online, that's a new opportunity. Let's look at that opportunity as well. So this document provides you with all of the information at your fingertips, the ability to make these maneuvers throughout careful planning and progressive development as the climates change. So really how to proceed, start with the existing parks and monitor the economic climate as you proceed into some of these bigger capital expenditures, joint use, establishing your joint use agreements right away, making sure those are in place so as new schools do come online with this new population that's growing. I've taken another hour of your time. I apologize about that. I apologize for my tardiness, but I think I have beaten Bob in the longest presentation possible, and that's not a good thing. I apologize. Robert sat through many of Bob's presentations, and I think he's, eyeing me now to stop talking. So I am here for any questions. I will remain for as long as you like. I, again, apologize for my tardiness.
Zach, I'd like to thank you. You may think it was long, but we savored it, all right? We've been looking forward to this for some time. So I do thank you. One of the things that you mentioned, I wanted to just ask Margarita a question. Are we keeping track of every possible grant opportunity? Because I know you handle those sort of things. Because I was thinking that on a regular basis, we should apply for grants all the time.
Well, I think that is the effort that we try to do comprehensively. There are some major grants that come out kind of on an annual basis through the California Department of Parks, and those ones were always actively. Other ones that kind of come up on like not maybe reoccurringly as they come up, we also try to gauge and see how if we have a project online. I think with grants, it's always not only about is that grant open, but also like do we have a project that's kind of shovel ready, that's ready to go in. But we do make efforts to try to always be aggressive about pursuing a grant opportunity because, again, it is, like Zach says, sometimes the chance to expedite or move forward a project that you may not know or may indefinitely kind of be sitting there until you can find a funding source for that. So,
And I think Margaret makes a great point about having projects that are shovel-ready, particularly for the larger grants that come most times from the state. The irony of it is that they require, usually you have an adopted Parks Master Plan, because that tells them you're closer to shovel-ready, and they're more willing to give you the money as a result. So, yeah, it's kind of cart before the horse, it feels like, but I understand they are hesitant to make their investment until the community is absolutely sure what they want to do.
Regardless of the park system, the trails, I mean, we've already spoken to Edison about using the corridor, the northern corridor. It's 300 feet wide and, 9-10 miles across? I forget what the thing, it's enormous. And while they'll think twice about putting in any structure there or any kind of field, because they don't like fields where balls go up in the air, but they certainly will not have any objection to a trail. And if we could get the money, which shouldn't be all that much, considering all we're doing is creating a trail. I mean, we should do it as soon as we can. They can't use it for anything else, so it's there for the opportunity of us taking it.
Following that line of reasoning, have we ever, or do you know of any municipal government that's ever pitched creating a grant? For example, we're having a drought. I see everywhere, everybody wants aquatic facilities. Obviously, builders don't want to put in swimming pools. Obviously, the citizens want to cool off and also have a facility they can use. Has anybody ever gone to, say, the water district or Metropolitan Water and said, look, you can save gallons and lots of private pools by giving us a grant so we can build a city facility? Has anybody ever tackled it that way?
It's
Rhetorically?
possible. EMWD has done that, and it is possible to go speak to them. I'm on their
Reverse of
advisory
the
board. I mean, you could ask them, actually, and we name it after them, so they'll feel some.
Yeah, exactly.
Really
They can
good.
put their corporate name on it, whatever.
Yeah, whatever they like.
You know if anybody's ever pitched it that way and say, look, here's an opportunity for you and for us?
It makes them look good, too.
I don't know that we've ever seen or heard of that in particular. It's kind of a unique situation. Southern California is unique in sense of trying to conserve in current times, but the priority that we've seen with many of the water districts down here is their grant efforts are intended to reduce use as a top priority, meaning they're going to fund conversion projects, right? And I don't think they make the connection between public pool facility and conserving water quite yet. I think they really see their footprint, what their current inventory of water use is by public and private residents, and how do we impact that immediately? And that tends to be their priority.
Right.
I don't think it would hurt to ask them.
That's what I'm saying. Has anybody ever tried it that way? Maybe we should.
I'd be more than happy to
Well,
speak to Ron.
We have a spot for that. We have 20 acres over near the high school.
Oh, yeah. Over by
Joint
Evans.
use. We've already looked at a couple of preliminary designs, one including an aquatic facility. That seems like a possibility to start that conversation.
I agree.
Okay.
What's the worst thing they can say, no?
Or they might say, hey, great idea, maybe every city should do it.
Yeah.
Okay, just, we'll put that on our.
Thank you, you're just
To-do list.
helping us to think beyond the box. Yes, Bill?
Thank you. Zach, do you mind, I don't know if you're able to, you might have gotten out of the program, but can you go back to one of the latter slides there? It was kind of,
See if I can get back in here.
almost at the end there. It's probably number
you,
four.
Alan.
Let's look at 45.
45,
Okay, so this is where we're talking about landing the spaceship. Which I like your analogy there. And-
I can't say it's my own. I did get it from somewhere
All
else.
right. I guess one of the questions, because this is really probably the most helpful thing for us. We've been talking since the formation of this commission about a regional park on the west side of the freeway. Wheatfield sort of serves as that on the east side, but there's sort of, there's nothing really on the west side as far as sports facilities. And I guess I was hoping that your report would also agree with that and kind of make a recommendation similar that supports that. And so I know you've gone through a heck of an exercise to create this, and one thing that I'm curious about is if another overlay might also include available properties that are large enough to accommodate some of these things, because that's something that we're considering when we say, okay, I think it was Commissioner Gaunt that originally brought the idea of a regional facility on the west side, and so right away we started thinking about, well, where? And the question of available land and all that, so looking at this, it gets me remembering where we were with that conversation of trying to locate and place a major facility. And so I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
A little bit. Now, when it comes to the opportunities in the distribution, first and foremost, I want to make sure there's equal distribution. Secondly, I might provide you one opportunity that could disappear later on. A developer could snatch it up, something could happen. So I provide a couple opportunities. So we have looked at both east and west sides, where these potential properties may exist and how we could fit in a regional park. Because as you did see throughout the presentation, it was a priority. A lot of people want a large regional park. So that means on my side, I can't just give you one spot. Say, here you go, it's going to be right here on the west side. Good luck.
You can't land the spaceship.
I can't land the spaceship there. I've got to have multiple landing spots.
Right.
So I will make sure those multiple landing spots have equal distribution among them. You're probably only going to do one, but I want to make sure there are a couple opportunities there. So yes, we do look at the facilities. I have looked at the east and the west, and that will be part of the park-specific recommendations, as well as different versions of what you could fit in a regional park. But depending on the constraints of the land and what it's next to as well, will also play into that.
You have the opportunity this evening, obviously, to make recommendations to us. That's a very good recommendation that you've obviously given a lot of thought and discussion to. So it's important, I think, as you go forward with this, that you do voice your opinion about specific things, and those recommendations are then forwarded along, as I understand. So
I got a technical question, I don't know if you can answer on that. Let's say we identify a reasonable sized piece of land for that park, but it's privately owned. Can we go in there, use eminent domain to buy it? Or do we have to go with whatever this person's price is, or are we out of luck?
There's usually a process for that. That exhausts everything before we get to the eminent domain landing spot, but
don't advertise the property, though. See, that's
Exactly.
the other thing we're a little concerned about. We don't want to put information in a public document that then somebody's gonna say, hey, man, that looks like I live there. Or
That's my house.
That's my, then all of a sudden, dollar signs so we try and give you latitude. It's a suggested location somewhere there. So those kinds of discussions and negotiations are way up here. They don't let us participate in those. But those are real sensitive discussions.
What I would say is, okay, so this piece of land is tangible, it's not that.
It would fit. It would fit, but
Okay.
Is it possible to get from you methods that you've seen that work to acquire such land? Especially when we're talking about large amounts, it might include more than one parcel in order to get the total amount needed.
There are several different methods to go about it, none of which in my scope here today. But, we could talk off record, Robert, of what we've heard our other cities do and maybe make some connections for that discussion to continue. I do not have methods direct for that specific piece. And as Bob mentioned, we don't want to put the Joneses' house on West 32nd and 84th.
No, but I mean, in a general way, how would a city go about
Yeah, and we can,
obtaining the land necessary?
and we can help get some of those conversations moving, absolutely.
Ken?
Mr. Chairman, can we go back just a moment from when Commissioner Zimmerman was talking about a regional park facility on the west side and so on? I just wanted to remind everybody that one of the terms that we used when we were talking about sports facilities, regional park, we were talking oftentimes about a fairgrounds type facility. Pavilions, grandstands, things like that.
Large areas, yes.
Okay, I just want to throw that in.
Bill?
Yeah, if you don't mind, can you go back a couple of more slides? There was one, keep going, it's, I'll show it to you in a second, there we go. So, on the second one, you got trails, jogging, and that's kind of probably, I'm assuming that's a accumulation of 3 or 4 different categories that went into one.
Absolutely.
And so when I look at some of the other ones, baseball, softball, and then down below football, and I don't know if that last one, is that supposed to be lighted ED sports fields?
Lighting of
What
sports
does lighting
fields, yes.
mean?
Adding lights to sports fields so that they can be played longer during the evening hours.
Okay,
Adding lights?
so lighting sports fields, football, then a couple more, a sports complex with artificial turf, and then softball, baseball, soccer. I can see that all being accumulated into one, and suddenly it's up on top, if you add up all the numbers.
Yes.
And so
A
It's
big
delicate
regional
balance.
field with all of it.
with that being said, and we all attended those public outreach meetings, and I thought that while it was being said, somebody would write on a board football, and then another guy'd write, well, we need lighted fields, but they were both talking about the exact same thing, and so they ended up getting split up on this.
Exactly.
And so I wonder if the accumulation on some might give them a higher priority and others didn't get accumulated and it got spread out.
That's actually a great question. I'm gonna go, let's see if I can go back to my chart here. Here we go. So as you can see on the chart in the background, there's a lot of X's. And when we go through these, we look at them with that understanding of some of them can be combined, some of them might not be combined. When you talk about lighting fields, it could be lighting on soccer fields, lighting on football fields, lighting on pickleball courts, whatever it is. So lighting fields kind of became one element, but we also take another look at it, and with staff, we look at where all those X's are. If they're duplicated, well, that number might not go up or down. So if the lighting of the fields was only in the 3 workshops, and they said football in the 3 workshops, well, the number doesn't move. So in that case, we want to make sure that there's equal representation of them rather than accumulation of them. But you're right, at some point, we could go through and just say, well, everything's kind of an aquatic. It gets a 15 or a 20. But we go through it, making sure that when I record the information of aquatics facility, there is a relationship between the conversation we had of aquatics facility and the conversation we had of swimming pool. So, in fact, those charts are much further, and that's all part of the detailed information when we go through the individual workshop summaries of not just, since you guys were there, I'm going to show you some of the pages, of not just the final consensus items, but what everybody said, what each group said, so we have a better understanding of kind of what the definition of lighting sports fields was. So you're right. We wanted to be considerate to not combine everything, but where we could, we did combine.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Where are
Yes,
those
go ahead.
Where are those 8 sports groups we talked about? You said they were mentioned later in the report.
Yes, I apologize. I can actually pull them up in the report here for you. I did mention the sport elements, but if, like I will pull them right out of the sport group here with the page on it. On page 56, Menifee Little League, Menifee Pony Baseball, Menifee ASA, Menifee Senior Softball League, AYSO, Valley-Wide Recreation, Menifee Youth Soccer, and Menifee American. And you can see there the players' percentages from Menifee as well on the right. So this kind of goes back into when we, stop me if I take too much time, I like talking about this. So when we get into, okay, are these travel leagues? As Robert had mentioned, you might want to look at if there's a larger regional sports park beyond your, I'm just going to use soccer demand, well, then you're bringing in travel leagues, you're capturing travel tax dollars.
And in a city that's so young, you have to come to realize that some of these sports leagues existed before the city incorporated. So when you look at their territory, by just their pure boundaries, we may consider them travel leagues because they extend beyond our city boundaries. And it hasn't been enough time since the city's incorporation for their groups to conform to city boundaries. That's typically what happens in the evolution. It could be that that hasn't happened yet. So many of them have, but many haven't. So.
Anything else, gentlemen?
I'd like to, if you'll indulge me for a second here, I had a quick couple of paragraphs I wrote as I reviewed this. First of all, thank you. This was like I said, I've seen a couple of these, and this is the best one I've ever seen. It does have a lot of detail, but it was money well spent, and I think it's a very good document. First, as I've reviewed the draft, to me, it's replete with a lot of good news, bad news data. While we are on the right path to a successful parks, trails, and open space management plan, it's clear from the report that we have several obstacles to overcome. I believe we have the beginnings of the right staff, which will evolve into a top-tier, city-controlled parks department. My main concerns are the serious acreage deficits per 1,000 residents. We must try to fix this as we grow mentality. I consider parks and trails to be just as an important part of our infrastructure as roads and bridges. History has taught us, especially in Menifee, that our infrastructure, be it parks or roads, has always been in deficit. We must change this historical pattern of trying to play catch-up. I believe that the report clearly confirms this through its use of empirical data and community input. The definitive good news is that we have reachable goals. It will take a combination of hard work, prioritization, political will, and yes, money, lots of it. But as long as we can keep our eye on the prize at Parks, Recreation, and Trails Department, which the city of Menifee is going to be very proud of it, and it can be done. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And adding to that, from your own first draft, you said that we are at a ratio of 1.83 acres per 1,000. That's when we were supposed to be 3. Now we're supposed to be 5. That's terrible.
Goal to shoot for, absolutely.
I know.
That's reachable.
Prize, yes.
Not going to happen overnight, but we've got to bring it up.
But it's understandable, knowing that we have a Sun City core area that was developed long before there were Quimby requirements and those kinds of things. So I think that the city's doing the right thing in 2 steps. One, that we've increased that Quimby from 3 to 5 acres per 1,000, as well as the CFD 2015-2, and I would encourage that every new project that comes online be a part of that, and then they're contributing. the developers aren't gonna like kicking, they're gonna feel like they're being double dipped, but it is what it is, and that's how we play catch up, and so I think we're on the right path, and, you know, do you agree, Robert, that
Oh,
with both of those in place, that we should be looking good?
I do. In fact, that's why the plan's so critical, because it really breaks the cycle of the developers doing anything they want. And really, even from the planning staff's perspective, not knowing what to tell them. This allows us to have a tool to do it. The Quimby, and our design standards have changed the game, so to speak.
Thank you.
The other thing in the report also is that there are a plethora of funding sources called out, which there are many, many of them, and I think if you throw that in as a package, well, I think we're looking good. On page 67 at the bottom, it says we need 258 additional acres. Currently, with the projects online, we're future or projects that are being built now, we have 213 of that ready to, you know, in process, which is great. We're still 45 acres short, but we're getting there. I think that's great.
Anything else, gentlemen? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to come out and a pleasure to be part of your team for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, what do we have to do? We need to accept the master plan, and then we need to direct staff to amend an ordinance to the Menifee Municipal Code. We need to do those separately?
Let me break that down a little bit. So yes, review and accept the master plan as presented by staff and consultant this evening, obviously incorporating recommendations made by commission tonight. And there is one caveat. There is a factor of trust that exists in that effort because they are going to take some of your discussion points and incorporate them into the site-specific park design concept plans that will be part of the appendices on that final document that City Council will have in front of them. I think there's been a lot of conversation leading up to tonight that will help in identifying those landing sites. I don't think there's a shortage of those. So there's a factor of trust there that we are asking the commission to have with that first action item. The second one is making a recommendation to City Council to direct staff to return to them after they've reviewed it on the 16th of December with an ordinance that will amend the municipal code and formally adopt the master plan as part of it or as a component of the general plan and require that all developers follow it, comply with it through the development code. So that is something that will happen assuming council concurs with the finding of the commission. That's something that can happen in the new year, very soon in the new year, because the sooner it's on the books, the sooner it's enforceable.
So we have to take those one at a time?
Yeah, it would be best to take them one at a time, yes.
All right, then I would ask for a motion to review and accept, well, we've reviewed, accept the city Menifee Parks, Trails, Open Space, and Recreation Master Plan as presented here, with the recommendations that have been stated along the course of the evening. Yes? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
I got a motion. How about a second?
No second?
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? We are unanimous. Gentlemen, thank you. We are actually unanimous. And now let's go to the second, that we recommend City Council accept this plan and direct staff to return with an ordinance at a later time, amending the Menifee Municipal Code to formally adopt the plan as a component of the general plan and development code. Again,
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
And I have a second. Any further discussion?
Will we have a chance to look at that?
I promise, yes.
We'll take your word, Robert. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are, oh, do we need to do this by roll call?
No, you
Okay,
do not.
thank you. In that case, we are unanimous on both.
Good job.
We have, you know how
Thank you.
thankful we are to you, gentlemen. It was wonderful.
Talking to you soon and wrapping this with a ribbon before Christmas. So it'll be a Christmas present. Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
It's really been a pleasure for us to work with you, and we look forward to the success of Menifee and the Recreation Commission and Department.
Thanks, Mr. Meany.
Thank you.
Now the work begins.
How about a hand for the
Yeah.
gentleman? Okay. Great work. Okay. Go to item 9. This meeting will go down in the record books, okay? Item 9. Robert.
And I'm going to implore my staff to be that brevity is our
Please.
ally tonight. I think because of the annual report, you'll see some similar figures, and it'll make it easier to get through this stuff. So with that, I want to turn over the capital improvement program update to Alan Yoon to give the feedback on it.
Thank you. I'll be providing an update on our CIP program. Highlighted in red is active projects. CS004, Sun City Boulevard Median Landscaping Project. The contractor is preparing the landscape and irrigation plans for city review. CS005, Park Monument Improvements. It's pending purchase order approval. CS006, Picnic Shelter Improvements. It's also pending purchase order approval, and staff is preparing the informal bid specifications for the installation. CS007, Park Furnishings Replacement. Staff is preparing bid specifications. CS025, AMR Skate Park Security Enhancements. Staff is preparing, staff prepared a staff report for City Council approval for 12/16.
And I'm going to add a couple of brief notes on this, starting with the Sun City Boulevard landscaping component. That contract was approved. It was recommended for approval by this commission, I believe, 2 meetings ago, if I'm not mistaken. City Council did approve that the other night, and so the contractor's first available time to start work is the first week in January, Alan. So it is only a 2 to 3 week job, but we have to obviously wait until they have time. They're very busy. So the only other ones I'm going to point out here are, as the consultant mentioned, the low-hanging fruit really is being addressed right here in some of these projects. Correcting some of our site furnishing issues, shelters like at La Marche that aren't painted, have no furnishings under, this fixes that. So these are huge steps forward, and I want to commend Alan for taking on this effort and responsibility to get these things done. We're almost there on some of them, so.
And these are just pictures or renderings of the future projects. So the first picture is the CS004, the Sun City Street Median landscaping rendering. The second picture is the CS005 Park Monument branding rendering. We're going to be adding the Menifee branding onto the existing park monuments. The existing park monuments that we have just say the park name, but it doesn't differentiate between Valley White or City of Menifee, so that will help identify it as a City of Menifee park. CS006, the picnic shelter rendering right there. We're going to be installing 2 new metal picnic shelters at ELP Peterson Park. We're going to be, our city staff will be demoing 1 existing wooden picnic shelter that's all rotted and ready to go, and then we'll be installing a brand new one on a concrete pad that doesn't have any picnic shelters on it. And then CS026, there's a picture on the bottom right corner. It's completed now. And it shows new metal mesh windows, adding additional security for the storage facility right there at ELP Peterson Park, and we did that in-house too.
Excellent. Does that bring us to 9.2?
It does, and there's only 3 really notable updates here. I'll point out Spirit Park, as you know, is opening on Saturday, and we're happy to have that one complete, and looking forward to 2 additional parks in AMR North, which concept designs you guys did see at the last meeting. I'm confident the developer's going to be submitting working drawings for those very, very soon. Moving down Central Park, Mylars have been submitted for signature, which is a great thing. And once we get them back out, they'll be ready to start moving earth. And then Salt Creek Trail, the one that was briefly discussed prior, there's been a series of meetings that have happened, and we have one more pending to try and coordinate the efforts of the developer of the subdivision, which is Brookfield, with county and city. So everyone's on the same page. What will become really kind of a critical speaking point is making sure that undercrossing beneath the freeway occurs without any issue. We also have a remaining challenge with some of the crossings at Bradley, Murrieta, and one other, I forgot the name of the street, because ultimately those are going to be bridges. And so right now they have to design them so that they don't get impacted too much when the bridges go in.
Speaking from a county standpoint, we were told by Mr. Brewer at the last meeting that things are working well. I was very curious to see what the undercrossing was going to look like. He assured me that it will be a sufficient height for equestrians, because it scares me because there's a lot of steel beams down there right now. I'm going,
Yeah.
but he said that that's going well, and I guess they are working with you guys on the Bradley overcrossing right now as far as how to get around or under.
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Okay. I will turn it over to Jason Hendricks, your community services supervisor, for the recreation update.
Good evening, Commissioners. As Robert mentioned, a lot of the numbers that you'll see in the report this evening are duplicated from the mid-year report, which we prepared. But just to highlight a couple of things, our senior center numbers continue to go up each month. FSA nutrition program has been doing really well along with several of the other classes, the computer classes that continue to be successful. In fact, this evening I just got a text that the excursion that was going out for the seniors to the Mission Inn is coming back, and they had a great time. So, and continuing to offer excursions for the seniors as well. They seem to really enjoy those, the groups that do go. Our contract class numbers continue to go up. Our Zumba class was finally able to get off and running, and we have a really great group of folks doing that class. Our instructor's really high energy, and she's having a great time doing it. We anticipate that number to go up as well. And then I believe Robert also mentioned earlier, we do have our next field allocation meeting, our sports council meeting, coming up this coming Wednesday. We've separated it this time into 2 groups. The first group will be the baseball, softball group. We anticipate that going a little longer because this is their primary season and we only have 2 fields to allocate to them. And we have about 6 groups that are going to be there trying to get the fields. So at this meeting, we don't necessarily allocate the fields to them. We just explain the process of how fields are allocated, our guidelines, policies and procedures, things of that nature. And then we talk about renovation schedules and things. And then we provide them their permits based on their requests and their rosters about 2 weeks after the fact, after these meetings, so that they know what they're going to expect when the season starts. So that'll be this coming Wednesday at the Case Nacero Senior Center. And then the second group will be the soccer football groups, which we only have soccer groups that come, and we have 2 groups that actually work pretty well together so far, knock on wood. So we're excited for that, anticipate having a good meeting. And also at Lazy Creek, the after-school program, after-school adventures program is what it's commonly referred to, is doing really well. As they continue to get guest speakers, usually about 1 every other week. They had the fire department come out recently for the kids to explore that. So Aisha's doing a really good job at her center to continue to pique the interest of the kids. We're getting pretty active with the teens. We're going to actually have a joint teen meeting with the Youth Advisory Committee that we oversee. They're going to be meeting with the City of Paris's Youth Advisory Committee to do kind of a joint brainstorming team building session on January 16th. So the kids are really excited about that, and so are we. That concludes my report. Just wanted to keep it brief. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
The important dates that you have below,
On the first page of
on the
this.
first
Yeah,
page.
Margaret, if you can go
December
back.
5, December 12.
I'll go ahead and, I think Jason's probably going to mention these as part of the special events item, but yes, they are there. He'll give you all the details then, I think, right?
Want me
You
to
can do
that
it now, maybe, yeah, sure.
Well, I'd also like to remind you to add December 13. There will be a menorah lighting at 5:30 at the Countryside Marketplace.
At Countryside or?
What is it called?
That's correct. So I believe the destination was changed from the roundabout
Yes,
as of
it was going
yesterday.
to be at the same place as the Christmas tree lighting, but based on the fact that we were going to have problems with light and all that, this is going to be at night, it was better to just transfer it to the marketplace. And Schreiber was very, very nice about it, and we got permission
Good for you.
from them. So
Great.
please add that to the list, but also add it to the, what do you call it?
The calendar, yes.
Calendar.
Yes.
What time is that?
5:30.
So-
It'll last about an hour.
So we'll update the community calendar to show the change of location.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you want me to go ahead and proceed to the special events?
Sure, while you're up.
Okay,
If
while I'm
that's
here,
okay, yeah.
I'd be happy to discuss the upcoming special events. We're going to be ending 2015 with a bang. We have two special events actually coming up on December 5th, which is just 2 days from today. We have our Breakfast with Santa event at the Case Nacero Senior Center. We're actually almost sold out. We've sold out the first two sessions, the 9 and 11 a.m. I'm sorry, the 9 and the 10:30. The 11:30 still has about 30 spots left last I checked. So if anybody's watching, there are still some spots available if you'd like to go have some breakfast and meet Santa. St. Vincent's, along with our staff, will be preparing the food and serving the food. And then there's going to be arts and craft activities, elves workshops, music, and then again, pictures with Santa. We do want to encourage residents to bring their own camera, though, so they can take their pictures at will with their own phones, cameras, what have you. Also on that day, as we've talked about several times this evening, Spirit Park is going to officially be opened on December 5th. It's coming Saturday. The festivities begin at 11 a.m. and will conclude at 2 p.m. We have a program prepared starting at 11, which will include some remarks from our city manager, our community services director, and Councilmember Leesmeyer, which is his district that the park resides in. So we have some background on the park itself and what's to come. And then from that point, we will actually go and cut the ribbon to officially welcome the facility to the community. And then we'll also be having a street renaming ceremony as well. And then from there, we have several activities for the residents. We have a obstacle course, bounce house, if you will, and a big blow-up slide, inflatable slide. And then we have two sports clinics we'll be doing to showcase two of the new amenities. To showcase the outdoor lit basketball courts, we have a basketball clinic that one of our staff members will be running for us, and that's open to all kids that want to come out and experience that. And then we have a tennis instruction from an individual that's going to actually be doing tennis contract classes at the facility in the tennis courts. So we're really excited about the tennis courts. We hope to do some great things there. And then, of course, we'll be giving tours, and people can tour the facility as they please throughout the day. So really excited for this Saturday. It's going to be a busy but fun day for us. And
Podium we could all meet at or something?
say that again, I'm sorry.
Be a podium or someplace we could all get together
That-
and meet at?
That's a good question. We do have a tent that will be out there, similar to how we had at Veterans Day. We'll have a tent there with a stage, podium. The flags, of course, will be there. The flags will actually be presented by a local Cub Scout group. So yeah, that'll definitely be the meetup point. And we have a big sign on the fencing right now along Newport that says Spirit Park Grand Opening, so the folks that are passing by know that it's time. We've been advertising on social media, so we're excited to have a really good turnout.
You won't be able to miss it. There'll be balloons and 40 by 60 tent, and yeah, big,
Yeah.
yes.
Great. And then, of course, on Saturday, December 12th, we have our Christmas tree lighting ceremony at the Menifee Town Center roundabout. There's been extensive planning involved. Had a planning committee that comprised of several different entities throughout the city. It's been a really great experience working with all those individuals to make this what I think will be a great event. And big thanks to Mark and his team. As Robert mentioned, they did a great job grading some really, I think, improvements on the parking in terms of the way the flow is going to go. Marguerite, are you able to pull that up? We have a map that we're going to be able to pull up for you to view of what the current parking situation will look like. It's page 2.
Did you grade the amphitheater while you were at it?
Not quite, but they did do a great job with the areas that they have. You'll see what we're going to be doing and what we're advertising is we're advertising that folks should plan on parking off La Piedra. So the reader board signs that you'll typically see for construction and things will say tree lighting ceremony, park off of La Piedra. We'll have signs indicating which way they should go. And so we'll be directing traffic to come in off La Piedra, and then Mark and his team cut out an area of the fence where individuals will be able to make a right into the big open space, which is now basically a makeshift parking lot. There are probably, I'll let Mark specify, but probably 600, if not more, parking spaces there.
Disneyland proportions.
Disneyland proportions, yeah. Not levels, but it'll be sufficient enough for this event for sure, and then some. And then as you'll see, the yellow area that you'll see on the map there, those are actually basins that have been marked off so that folks don't drive their cars into them. It's marked off by fencing, orange fencing, so it's bright in the night when they're leaving. We also have rented some light towers for the parking area so that people can see when they're going to and from their cars and when they're trying to exit, so there's no safety issues either. And then as you'll see a little bit further down towards Newport, that is where our staff and vendor parking will take place. So when staff and vendors come in off of Newport, which they'll be directed to do so, they will make a right into the facility and then an immediate right into the parking area that also has been graded by Mark and his team, with the basins being blocked off by the orange fencing as well. And then to the left, we will not have any parking. The only vehicle that will go past, you'll see kind of a red barricade there. The only vehicle that will go past that point is the fire engine, which will carry Santa Claus. Actually, two fire engines. One will be carrying Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus, and then make a roundabout to drop them off. The other one will be the standby vehicle. So if I think somebody mentioned earlier, how are they going to get out if there's a call, if there's an emergency? They'll loop around and they'll have a straight shot to get out without anybody, without any cars being in the way, because they'll be faced out towards Newport. So we feel like we have a pretty good strategic plan here to make parking a little bit better than it might have been in the past. And we'll learn and continue to get this better, but I think that this is where we need to be. And then, of course, to the left, if you're looking at the map to the right of the roundabout, that's where the snow zone will be, as well as the Elves Workshop, where kids will be able to make ornaments and things of that nature.
Why don't we go one page before that?
Thank you,
Maybe
yeah.
zoom in a bit. There you go.
So you can see here we have the snow zone and the kids zone, which will the snow zone and the Elves Workshop, which will be right next side by side. We've added 10 additional tons of snow, so we'll have 40 total tons of snow for the sled ride, if you will. We're going to have 2 separate lanes, one for younger kids, one for older kids, and then we'll have that built basically on the hay. So the hay will be set up on Friday. The snow will come in and basically be sprayed over the hay so that people can use those as steps, and we can use those to separate the lanes. We also have a stage, which is to the right of the roundabout if you're coming in from Newport. We have a full lineup of stage performances that day, and the best thing about it is this year it's all local performances. So we have the Paloma Valley High School band. Literally the entire band is scheduled to be there. We have St. Vincent's Choir performing, LDS is performing, several other individuals that came to us and expressed interest in performing. So we're really excited about the lineup that we have of local Menifee talent that'll be performing that night. And then, of course, the evening will conclude with the screening of the movie Santa Claus, and that'll take place. If you'll see, there's a blue screen there, a blue rectangular screen. That's where the movie will actually be screened, so that as kids are, taking pictures of Santa or in the snow zone, they'll still be able to have a little bit of a view of the movie. So we try to make it all pretty centralized. And then our partners with the Menifee Valley Chamber of Commerce are handling the vendors this year. We met with Michelle yesterday, and she said she has about 40 currently confirmed. 6 food vendors, I think 3 folks that are selling drinks and chocolate milk and things like that, and then a whole bunch of craft vendors that are obviously seasonal. So we're excited to see the different offerings that those folks bring out as well. So that is the tree lighting ceremony, and again, that is from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. We definitely want to encourage our residents to get there early so they can park and enjoy and not miss any of the festivities. And then finally, the last kind of a long-term event that we have is our Santa on Wheels program. This is something new that we're offering this year. It's actually a typo. I apologize on the date. It actually starts December 14th, and that event sold out within probably a week of the announcement that it was being offered when it went out in our Menifee Matters. December 14th through December 23rd, every night Santa will be going out and making stops at homes throughout the community to spread some Christmas joy and take pictures with kids, and in some cases deliver presents if that's already been prearranged. So that'll be an exciting time for the staff and also for the participants that are involved. So really looking forward to finishing out the year in a great way. Be happy to answer any questions about special events you might have.
Just a request, Margarita, could you please make copies of the 2 maps that we don't have? Okay? Thank you.
My pleasure.
So that brings us to
think you're not busy.
9.4. Mark?
Put them at the beginning of the schedule.
Good evening, everyone. Robert went over some of the numbers. You know, we continue to stick right in there. On the year-to-date, I just wanted to say, this is everything at the Case Center, 85 work orders we've received. Now, that kind of shows you what kind of condition the building was in. It's looking better all the time, and has the LED lights all the way around that building now, too. We're working on our West Annex right now. Let's see here. And we continue to do the weekly maintenance inspection of parks and all the facilities. Kenny, our new guy, he's completed all of the preliminary inspections on the new LLMD areas. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. So we'll just continue to move forward and try to get everything looking good. J-Bar Ranch area, you know, any of those areas along there. So we did find, we kind of nicknamed it No Man's Land, and Robert's working on that. So some forgotten areas, so, you know, we'll try to get everything together on that. Let's see here. We received keys for Spirit Park today. So we actually have keys that we can open doors and all that, and we're locking everything and securing bollards up, and so we're pretty much ready for the Saturday grand opening. So we have our landscapers out tomorrow kind of touching everything up, trash can liners, you know, just making sure everything's okay before we have this start up. I have a final drive-through with Brookfield and Park West on Monday morning for Newport turnover. So they're ready to turn Newport Road over to us. So we're going to do a final thing. I held them up on a few issues that I didn't like, and they kept dragging their feet. Well, it's done. So
I said earlier, kicking and screaming, right?
yeah. Well, you know, that's the only way to get what you want. So let's see. Yeah, my guys have been really working hard preparing for the tree lighting. I think the biggest thing myself, I didn't work for the city last year, and it was really jammed. We got in early enough with my granddaughter, but we saw what the people had to go through. So my idea was kind of just to go on the one side, keep the cars away, open that road where people could walk up and down. So we've kind of eliminated all that to the one side. So I think we're good for emergency services. We'll have people at each end, his staff will. And so emergency ambulances or whatever would be able to access the property really quick. So let's see, and the fences came down in Spirit Park today. So and they have security until Saturday around the clock, 2 guys. So hopefully they can keep everything secure out there. Let's see, final walk. I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions.
Gentlemen? That's not.
Did you
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, did you say that they took the fence down?
Yes, the
Around Spirit
construction
Park?
fence got taken down today. They're doing some touch-up landscape around the outside area. I mean, everything's complete. It's got reclaimed water hooked up, CalSense controllers. We're talking to it from my computer. Everything's good.
And Mark is referring to the CalSense controller. One of the CIP items was to upgrade in the field the controllers that have old innards. They're like based off of obsolete phone modem connection style. It's old, it's gone, and some of those just weren't communicating anymore. So what had to happen is his guys would have to be out in the field to make all the adjustments to the systems, and obviously spot check the systems on site to see if there was a break or a pressure change. All of that stuff, that's changed in at least 8 of our sites, and we have plans for others too. We ordered the software to be able to control everything from any web-based computer. So now Mark can see the activity at various sites in the city from his office. So.
Yeah, so it's a constant where I come in at 6:30 in the morning and I hit alerts and I can go right through any problems. I just hit print, and the guys come in and boom, we got a problem out there. So actually all the LLMD areas, all the CalSense is commuting every one of them right now. So that's a big deal. 5 months we've been here, 5.5. So anyway, we're moving forward. So,
Mark, it looked like there was one more slide for you. At least it was printed here. Bollards and.
Just some,
Oh,
some
okay,
photo
yeah.
examples,
Yeah, that's, where we're talking about the in-house, we just got done installing bollards out in the AMR area on the trails. They got forgotten way back when, I guess, but so, in-house, we installed all those and basically secured the trail so people can't drive up if somebody's, with their stroller or whatever, which has happened over the years I've seen, so, anyway.
And then new HVAC at KCC.
Oh, yes, on the West Annex. We just got the new air conditioner installed in there, and I didn't see the picture, so I didn't know if it was coming up. So, yeah, I took that picture when they had to bring the crane truck in and do everything there, and there's a picture of the LEDs at the K Center, the main building now. So I think we did that for under $200. Did the whole place LEDs. So I think we're going to see a substantial, between thermostats we've done, I mean, just on and on, so.
there is a new CIP project that was not part of the list of projects you approved some time ago, because we found, I didn't find, Alan and Margarita found some leftover money from previous CDBG projects that needed to be reprogrammed in the amount of $21,000 approximately, which will fund replacement of 2 additional obsolete HVAC units at the KC Center. So that's coming very, very soon, and really important because that is a cool center. And when you're talking about an aging population, if you don't have those cool centers operational and it goes out, it could mean some really bad things. So we're happy to be able to get those completed with the savings from prior projects.
Excellent.
That's it? All right.
Thank you. Brings us to item 10, Commissioner reports on any activities? No? Any future agenda items? I think everybody's tired. Well, in that case, I will entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
I was just going to say, if we adjourn, maybe we can do it in memorial honor of the victims of the tragedy in San Bernardino.
Absolutely.
I'll move that adjournment in honor.
Second.
We are adjourned.